Chapter 15:13. Yin Nuoxing did not expect that the front line of the void was calm. He thought that the underworld would have put the reconstruction of the void on the agenda or had already started, and the speed and strength of their advance should have changed as the plan unfolded. Regardless of whether it was a plan or not, there were changes. They had become lazy, hiding in their own blockade without responding for a long time, did not come out to tease the champions of the Order world, did not turn the void into a haunted house, and did not appear to be playing tricks in the dark. But Yin Nuoxing was not too sure about that. Who knew if they were hiding in some corner of the void and wreaking havoc? This could barely be considered a good thing for the world of order. They had time to rest and recuperate. They had time to make preparations that would never be sufficient. They had time to be on tenterhooks. To be honest, if they did not fight, it would really make people worry if they were holding themselves back in the dark. The main thing was that they did not have so much time to think when they fought. Their days were peaceful, as if they had returned to the standoff more than 100 million years ago, and no one knew how long this fight would last. The energy response of the Abyssal Death Shroud has almost returned to the level of the last standoff. It is almost completely silent, and the excess energy that had accumulated before was released into the void on the spot, as if it had dispersed its will to fight. Jing Yuanji turned to Yin Nuoxing. The two of them stood on the wall and looked at the Abyssal Death Shroud blockade. Yin Nuoxing looked at the wall of black and crimson in the distance and sighed. Jing Yuanji opened her mouth and hesitated for a moment before continuing. The front line's monitoring of the Abyssal Death Shroud has never relaxed. The entire Order world is under our surveillance. Other than not being able to see what is on the other side of the Abyssal Death Shroud, there is no change in the void. Yin Nuoxing frowned, and his mind was spinning. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? He then began to doubt his life, wondering if he had guessed something wrong again. Could it be that the Abyssal Death Shroud, the underworld, is not actually trying to reshape the void, but have some other purpose? They want to do something else, or they're all crazy, and suddenly made the Abyssal Death Shroud move forward 100 million years on a whim, or they're really seizing the opportunity to push forward as much as they can after seeing the collapse of the void frontline. The brains of the underworld are probably muddled by the Abyssal Death Shroud. God knows what they are thinking. Even if he wanted to ask Bei, Hao, and the fledgling, it would not work. That is the heavenly god of the primeval. What should he do to pry their mouths? According to Lord Maple's previous speculation, they should take advantage of this momentum to continue attacking the Order world and expand their victory, Jing Yuanji said softly. Yin Nuoxing leaned on the wall with a gloomy face. At this time, being anxious would only reduce the morale of his own people. Even if he had all kinds of troubles, he could only keep it in his heart. At this time, the only thing he could do was to deal with whatever came his way. As the saying goes, if soldiers come for soldiers, water comes for a weir. If soldiers and soldiers did not come for them, what else could they do? They could only wait for the underworld to make a move and then quickly respond. This was the only thing they could do now. As for attacking, if they gathered all the forces of the Order world and clashed head-on with the Abyssal Death Shroud, they would have a 60% chance of winning. However, if the underworld suddenly appeared in the middle of the battle, they would be finished. Furthermore, there was no forces of the Order world here. It was useless to say so much. Let's just wait. Yin Nuoxing stretched his body. The energy on his body flickered a few times. He sighed and said, right now, what the underworld wants to do is still a mystery. We can only wait for them to make a move first before we can make a move. It's not reliable for the weak side to make the first move. One wrong move would drag the entire Order world down with it. And in this war, there will definitely be many mistakes. We did not have the upper hand from the beginning, and we might not have the upper hand in the future. The surprise attack is just a trick. Not to mention the effectiveness of it. If we use it too much, the surprise attack itself will easily cause problems. Jing Yuanji nodded. Lord Maple was hinting that they could not always rush into the Abyssal Death Shroud and cause a ruckus. If they played too much, there would be a time when they went overboard. When that time comes, the already weak Order world would not even have the possibility to recover. Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji looked at each other on the city wall, and sighed. They wanted to talk about something, but there was nothing to talk about. Jing Yuanji felt a little awkward. Originally, she should have let Lord Maple rest for a while after he returned. However, the abyssal death shroud was the biggest problem in the world of order. It was also the first thing that needed to be reported. Yin Nuoxing sighed again. He felt both physically and mentally exhausted. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked to the side. He put on a smile and said, "Why are you all here?" Jing Yuanji turned his head and saw 4 figures descending from the sky. 2 of them wanted to pounce on Yin Nuoxing directly. However, before they landed, they saw Yin Nuoxing's face twitching. They quickly adjusted their expressions and did not rush forward. Instead, they walked over quietly. "You're back. Did the operation go smoothly?" Feng Qingwang smiled faintly and walked forward. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Yin Nuoxing chuckled. He turned his gaze to Si Yu and Dao Tian, who had finally woken up after sleeping for a few years. "You two have woken up as well. It's been 2 or 3 days since I woke up. I saw that a certain busy person in the void didn't even return home. So I had to bring a few girls out." Dao Heaven put on a sly smile and looked at Yin Nuoxing. She had successfully reached reciprocity and seemed to be in a good condition. She walked up to Yin Nuoxing and patted his shoulder casually. "What's wrong? The busiest person in the void? What problem did you run into? If you talk to me properly, it's not like I can't help you." Yin Nuoxing said, "What's with that weird tone of yours? I just learned it not long ago. I heard that it can make tired people come back more energetic. Change back. TSK, you boring guy." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He could hear the oil on her ears from her tone. This girl had gone crazy after sleeping for a few hundred years. She just happened to have nothing special to do right now. However, he thought that if he didn't take her out to see what was going on, she would probably start tormenting the city in the void frontline. The problem was that they really had nothing to do before the abyssal death mist made a move. Not really. Yin Nuoxing brushed the back of his ears. Si Yu stared at the big earlobe that he was swinging around and suddenly wanted to bite it. An inexplicable sense of crisis made Yin Nuoxing shudder violently. He hurriedly stopped what he was doing and used his hand to tidy up his long hair. After a while, he said slowly, "I have nothing to do. It has been a long time since I last went into seclusion." "Huh? Seclusion again? How long has it been since I woke up? How much do you not want to see me?" Little star. At the mention of seclusion, Dao Heaven instantly exploded. Si Yu looked tired, and her face was full of immortal energy. Yin Nuoxing just remembered that Si Yu was the kind of girl who couldn't sit still. She had just woken up, and now she had to go into seclusion again. It would be better to let her fight with the abyssal death mist. Cough, cough. Seclusion doesn't mean I'm asking you to cultivate. Besides, I'm the one in seclusion. Yin Nuoxing put his hands on his waist and sighed. After thinking about it, he guessed that seclusion was the only thing he could rest for a while. It was really uncomfortable. "I found something over there that I need to study for a while. Maybe it's a method to deal with the abyssal death mist. If you're interested, you can come and take a look. If you can't wait, you can go for a walk in the city. After all, we're still in a state of battle, so don't go too far." "Oh." The girls looked at each other. Before they could reply, they saw that Yin Nuoxing had already stretched and yawned and walked away. They looked at each other again and hurriedly followed him. After thinking about it, there was indeed nothing they could do. Instead of walking around the city, they might as well go with him and see the new thing he found. To be honest, in this situation where the void was in turmoil, everything had to be compromised for the sake of dealing with the abyssal death mist. Well, they definitely weren't feeling regretful because they couldn't go out and play. After returning to the warm little nest in the void frontline, Yin Nuoxing just found the special space he had built. Before he could close the door, the 5 girls walked in one after another. Feng Qingwang, who walked at the back, helped him close the door. "Didn't you all want to go out and take a walk?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He looked at Jing Yuanji, who had an expression of, "It's not me, don't look at me" on her face. He looked at Si Yu and Dao Tian and found that they were just smiling and not saying anything. Yuan Kong and Feng Qingwang helped him prepare the space and then sat around him. They were all waiting for a good show to start. It made him feel like he was being executed in public. In this vast white space, there was no sky or earth. Everywhere was flat ground. If one wanted a sky or earth, they only needed to imagine it. And before he actively used his consciousness to weave this space, it was pure white like this. In the distance, there were transparent rectangles and strange polygons floating around in the space. This was the observer space that Yin Nuashin carried with him. His spirit and soul were connected to the realm of the gods. A part of that space was projected here, but it couldn't be stored in his spirit and soul. It could only be placed in a real space and replace the existence of that space. This was the space that Yin Nuashin used to do some strange things. Its level of security and secrecy was about the same as the defense of the creation's barrier. Even if someone in the Yuanshe realm wanted to see the truth, he would know. In short, it's a place where you use to study all kinds of explosions, all kinds of more magnificent explosions, and all kinds of grander explosions, Siyu said crisply. Yin Nuashin. Oh no, he couldn't refute that. After all, when he was about to weave some new and extremely dangerous formations to test their power, it wasn't convenient to use them in the realm of the gods. Also, he was too lazy to go to the void, so he just sank into the observer space and grabbed a piece of space to use. Compared to using the observer space as a prison, this was its greatest use. One of them. Yin Nuashin coughed dryly and sat on the ground. He took out two things from his mind, his soul. One was an irregular blue spherical energy crystal with a radius of 1 foot, and the other was a sea urchin energy crystal of the same size. Both were taken from Big Sister White. The green sand blood and the crystallization of the abyssal death mist. Both of them carried Big Sister White's aura. If possible, he actually wanted the original power of divine destruction that the green sand blood represented. However, that power was not easy to capture, and it no longer existed in the sea urchin world. So, he had to give up on that idea and make do with this. The underworld's greatest reliance, other than their own primeval deity, was the mist of divine destruction that filled the void. They had a powerful primeval deity as a component and could extract an endless amount of mist of divine destruction from it. Moreover, the mist of divine destruction seemed to have a certain degree of moldability. The underworld had some means to make the abyssal death mist that they thought could not be distorted and changed into something that was beneficial to them. For example, he knew that the aura of the abyssal death mist that the fledgling carried was not exactly the same as the abyssal death mist that they were confronting now. The latter was more difficult to control, while the former was more controllable. They probably used another power of divine destruction to distort the abyssal death mist and then mixed it into the fledgling's body to force it into the realm of primeval. Theoretically speaking, the underworld would also be affected if they came into direct contact with the abyssal death mist. He couldn't completely confirm this point, but probably it should be correct. It couldn't be that the fledgling had a stomachache after being purified by the abyssal death mist, could it? Oh, speaking of the fledgling, Yin Nuashin took the icosahedron cage out of his head and threw it into another space in this space. He washed it clean and used it as a backup. Dao Heaven watched as Hao Run took things out of his head and felt that the process was unusually frightening. Why do you always like to hide things in your head? Not only her, the maidservants were also creeped out and had goosebumps. It's safe and convenient, Yin Nuashin said concisely. Energy life forms don't have a physical body. I don't have to worry about my brain getting stuck if I put it in my head. Besides, there's no difference between putting it in my head and stuffing it in my stomach. It's all the same. Don't ask me how I know. The maidservants scratched their heads blankly. The little angel let out an "oh," and Jing Yuanji also came to a realization. She had peeked at the scene where Lord Feng swallowed the energy tower in one gulp. But she couldn't say that. She definitely couldn't say that. She would be humiliated into anger by Lord Feng. She quickly turned to look at the two things. She had a vague feeling that the two things were related to the abyssal death mist, but she couldn't quite figure it out. Yin Nuashin sat on the floor for a while. Suddenly, he felt uncomfortable and stood up. He then saw the maidservants looking up and locking their eyes on him. He scratched his head awkwardly again. After a while, he said, "These two things might be the most important things I got from the other side of the void, right? Probably." Lord Feng, it seems to be related to the abyssal death mist. Jing Yuanji looked at the white thing and frowned. I am not very sure. It seems to be the abyssal death mist, but it has pure order? That's right. The abyssal death mist of order. If we have to deal with this kind of abyssal death mist and its spawn, I plan to surrender with the order of the void. Yin Nuoxing said seriously. The maidservants were shocked. Yin Nuoxing put the sea urchin crystal where his hands were. A pure white light of energy surged and wrapped around the crystal. As his hands gently pulled, the shadow of the sea urchin crystal slowly appeared on his right hand. Then, his hands were gradually pulled apart. When the shadow and the entity were completely separated, the shadow suddenly became solid. When he replicated it, he threw the original sea urchin crystal into his mind. Holding the replicated crystal, he poured his own level of energy into the crystal. Then, with a shake of his hand, he threw it above him. With a weak flash of energy, the sea urchin-shaped crystal suddenly exploded, turning into a dense energy storm that engulfed this space, causing the expressions of the girls to change. This storm had the same aura as the abyss death mist, but it was of the order attribute. With this change, it was equivalent to being completely different from the abyss death mist. An abyssal death mist of order. Jing Yuanji looked at the white storm raging around them and couldn't help but stand up. Her expression gradually became serious in a few seconds. She also thought of what Yin Nuoxing thought when he first found out. Yin Nuoxing suddenly pulled out the Netherworld Ruin Sword and threw it into the air. With a wave of his hand, he covered the maidservants with layers of energy barriers. Then he caught the falling Netherworld Ruin Sword and knelt down to stab it into the ground. A violent energy storm suddenly erupted with him as the center. The sudden change shocked CU and the others. They wanted to defend themselves, but the energy barriers on them had already blocked all the energy attacks. Only a gust of wind blew their hair and robes. Jing Yuanji instantly knew what Master Feng was doing. She immediately looked around. Looking at the abyssal death mist of order that had turned into a storm, Mei Mao's expression became more and more serious. After a while, Yin Nuoxing pulled out the Netherworld Ruin Sword and casually waved it. The faint silver light on his body faded away. He looked around and frowned slightly. Just as he was about to speak, Jing Yuanji reported first. Master Feng, the destructive energy of the origin of nothingness order on the abyssal death mist of order is 30% less destructive than the original abyssal death mist. That means it still has destructive power, but Yin Nuoxing glanced at her and nodded. He waved his hand and changed several layers of energy barriers for the maidservants. His body glowed with dark red energy, and he stabbed the sword into the ground again. The violent energy formed by the power of God's destruction surged out like a tsunami. This time, it wasn't just Jing Yuanji. The maidservants were also helping to observe the situation around them. As they watched, their expressions became more and more serious. They understood Yin Nuoxing's power very well. Under his violent power, even the abyssal death mist didn't seem so scary. However, Master Feng, the origin of nothingness order's damage to the abyssal death mist of order is 70% less. When Jing Yuanji said this, she was shocked. She sucked in a breath of cold air. If even Master Feng's power was weakened to this extent, then the origin of nothingness order might really have no way to deal with the abyssal death mist. Order has weakened order by 30%, but the power of chaos and destruction combined is weakened by 70%. Yin Nuoxing's expression became strange. It's just like how we're using the power of order to deal with the abyssal death mist now. It's even stronger than what we're doing now. How unreasonable. The product of the combination of two different powers of God's destruction, which contained the power of two different orders, was strengthened to the pinnacle of origin by his means. To think that it could reach such a level. He had expected it from the start, but he didn't think it would be so ridiculous. Chapter 15-14. Dozens of holes had been created in the white storm by the powerful energy impact just now, and it had become much thinner overall. This kind of injury was only a small injury to it. As long as it had energy, it would be able to completely recover in a short while. In the short time that Yin Nuo and the others had been observing, the orderly abyssal death mist had completely recovered. The abyssal death shroud can recover with the help of the power of order, and the speed of recovery seems to be 60 to 70% faster than the original. Jing Yuanji looked up and observed the pure white wall. There was only the power of order in this space. Lord Feng deliberately controlled the power of order to make it recover quickly. After that, he tested it a few more times. The result was actually not much different. The abyssal death shroud that had 2 powers of order was a little too powerful. Because it was a power of chaos, the suppression of order still existed, but it was much weaker. Using the power of chaos to deal with it would also be suppressed to a certain extent. On the other hand, its power was much stronger, and its destructive power against order had increased by a lot. As for chaos, well, that was ignored. There were only a few people in the void of order who had non-order powers. There was only one person. In summary, the abyssal death shroud had resistance against the power of order. Its counterattack against the power of order had been amplified by a lot. If the underworld knew about this, they would really surrender. Let me try again. Yin Nuoxing put 2 layers of order barriers on the girls. His body was surging with silver white and black energy. The origin energy and the annihilation energy flowed quickly in his body. He took a deep breath and stabbed the Netheruin sword into the ground. The 2 powers of order suddenly burst out. The indiscriminate energy impact made the barriers on Feng Qing Wang and the others emit a sonorous sound. Mottled black patterns and pure white energy, runes appeared and then disappeared together. The resulting energy was like 2 overlapping waves, unleashing extreme destructive power. The death shroud of the abyss, which had been standing firm just a moment ago, after coming into contact with the energy impact of the 2 powers of order, Jing Yuanji and the others finally saw a familiar scene. The white circle of storm crumbled in an instant. The powerful storm was torn apart from the inside by an even more violent wind, and the entire area was emptied in an instant, leaving not even a speck of dust behind. Moments later, Yin Nuoxing pulled out the nether void sword, and the 2 powers of order on his body quickly receded. He looked at the space that was as clean as when he first arrived and waved his hand to put away the nether void sword. As expected, this is the power they use to distort the pattern of the void and create a new future. Yuan Kong was stunned the entire time. Now that the surroundings were clear, he suddenly jumped up. Idiot, I think I can feel it from there. The breath of the same race. That's right, you and your sister are the same race. It's just that you came from the same world consciousness. By the way, I've given you sentient beings born from the death shroud of the abyss a name, the abyssal consciousness. Just make do with it for now. Yin Nuoxing continued Yuan Kong's words and said, she was originally a normal abyssal consciousness. When those people from the underworld created the sanctum of evolution, they added a lot of strange things into it. There might be another kind of god-destroyer power in it. She was most likely contaminated by that unknown god-destroyer power and turned into order. Because of that, she went crazy for a period of time. The abyssal death mist of order was the power she controlled. Yuan Kong's eyes flashed and turned to the irregular orb. Other than the death shroud of order, the orb was also emitting a breath that was slightly similar to her. It felt a little familiar. Is it this thing? If I'm not wrong, it should be. Yin Nuoxing nodded. It's just that the crystallization of divine destroyer power is tainted with the breath of the abyssal consciousness, so I don't know what it originally looked like. I've analyzed it for a while, and other than knowing that this power is order, I don't know anything else. It's different from all the divine destroyer powers I've seen so far. It doesn't have the same breath, and there are no similar parts. Even order is order, and all the divine destroyer powers I've seen before were non-order. In fact, even this green blood of the sand, being a divine destroyer power, is just our guess. After all, Divine Destroyer power is difficult to be affected by other powers. My element of extinction had no choice but to bend and turn around after encountering a tough nut like the origin energy. Therefore, I've determined that the green blood of the sand is either a Divine Destroyer power or an even more powerful order power. As for the origin of the Divine Destroyer power, from the current speculation, it was born after the fall of the origin great deity. The conditions of its birth were unknown, and the reason for its birth was unknown. It was a little similar to the power of divine right, but it was more inclined towards the destructive side of divine right. It gave all things death and destruction, except for that one. Currently, it was only known that its power was inclined towards order, but it was not known what it could do. The Divine Destroyer power can affect the Divine Destroyer power. Feng Qing Wang suddenly said softly. Then, little star, your element of extinction can't affect the death shroud of the abyss. Why? Probably because both of them belong to the chaos plane. They are already rotten to the core. No matter how much you affect them, it can't make them worse. On the other hand, the green blood of the sand is of the order type. Perhaps that's why it can distort the death shroud of the abyss. Yin Nuoxing replied. Feng Qing Wang tilted her head and agreed. Yin Nuoxing tugged at her bangs and mumbled to herself. Assuming that the green blood of the sand is a normal non-order power, to turn it into an order power, we would have to use a power of order that is more powerful than the green blood of the sand. First, we have to get rid of the origin energy. The green blood of the sand doesn't have the presence of such a power. Then, it's basically nothing. The position of the green blood of the sand on the world ladder is not that different from the origin energy and the annihilation energy. If we can't get rid of the origin energy and the annihilation energy, then we can only say that the green blood of the sand is an order power. Well, let's ignore it for now. He came to this place to test the effect of his power on the death shroud of the abyss. Secondly, he wanted to use these things that he got from the other side of the void. He already had this idea when he knew that the green blood of the sand could partially suppress the death shroud of the abyss. However, he didn't know how to use it. If he didn't handle it well and mess things up, the death shroud of the abyss would evolve into an order power. Feng Qing Wang looked at him and suddenly said, Little star, try to use the origin energy and the green blood of the sand to mess with the death shroud of the abyss. See under what circumstances the death shroud of the abyss will turn into an order power. If you want to use the green blood of the sand to deal with the death shroud of the abyss, you have to understand this first. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. How do you know what I want to do? I was just thinking and didn't say anything. Feng Qing Wang smiled faintly and said nothing. Seeing this, the little angel could not help but say, Telepathy across time and space, as expected of your little wife since young. Yin Nuoxing's face turned red and white. That will only happen in the future. No, I've never thought of it that way. Yin Nuoxing wanted to argue with the little angel, but when he saw the little angel's smirk, he hesitated for a while. In the end, he quickly slipped out of the spiritual realm. Seeing that the girl was prepared, it would be a waste of time if he still went up to her. A power that could suppress the abyssal death mist was right in front of him. It would be a lie to say that he was not tempted. In this part of the void of order, no one would be able to remain calm in the face of such a power. If the entire front line of the void had this power, the pressure on them would be reduced by at least half. The premise was that they would not be forced into the form of order. Otherwise, they would really be finished. A long time ago, Yin Nuoxing had been craving this kind of power for a long time. At that time, the abyssal death mist was still a blockade and the war of 100 million years had not begun. But at that time, he was just daydreaming all day long. He did not really think about what to do when this kind of power was placed right in front of him. He had also been fooling around, hoping that he could get lucky. However, the probability of this kind of thing happening was too small. If he did something with a purpose without any basis, the result would be that he would not be able to achieve anything unless he was extremely lucky. Putting aside the many things that had a small probability of happening, the probability of those things happening was not much higher than the probability of the great reincarnation happening tomorrow. In short, this kind of thinking was still stuck in the stage of thinking. The specific way to deal with it was still a blank piece of paper. Later on, there was the time axis resonance, the warped races, and the 100 million years of war. One trouble after another came one after another. That kind of vision was almost permanently put aside. Speaking of which, he was really busy. His main job was to be a warrior who charged into enemy lines. Here, he was also doing research, tracing history, repairing the void, maintaining the world order. Damn it, how many part-time jobs did he have to do? Even if he was the heavenly god of origin, he could not do so many things at once. If this went on, he would be exhausted to death. Little star? Feng Qing Wang found that Yun Nuoxing's expression had been pixelated. She tilted her head and called out in confusion. Air! Yun Nuoxing's thoughts, which had drifted to the other side of the void, were finally pulled back. He took a deep breath and said, "No, I was thinking about some very stupid, nonsensical things and some very complicated and troublesome things. I was a little distracted. When little Xian and the others are not around, if little Qing Huang is also not around, who is going to pull your thoughts back from tens of billions of light years away? Do you need my help?" The little angel, who was well aware of a certain someone's ability to let his mind wander to the other side of the void when he was thinking about troublesome things, could not help but sigh. That certain someone looked depressed and speechless. He quietly retorted in his soul, "That's divergent thinking. That's right, I was just thinking you were just distracted. Yin Nuoxing, wait, let me think." Use the azure blood of the sand and the origin energy to come into contact with the abyssal death shroud and see the changes in the abyssal death shroud under various circumstances. Although I think it would be good to only use it to check the violent situations on the battlefield. Let's try both just in case. Yin Nuoxing pulled her bangs to hide her absent-mindedness. She muttered as she thought, and then looked at Yuan Kong. "Girl, we probably need both of you to help with this. After all, the azure blood of the sand and the abyssal death shroud of order in our hands are tainted with the power of the same origin as yours. It would be much easier with your help." His essence was more chaos. He stood on the highest level of the order plane, comparable to Hui, who had ascended into the realm of Yuan Shi. However, his own power, due to the elements of death and annihilation, was leaning towards the chaos plane before he activated enough or fully mastered several types of origin energy. Moreover, his level was the same as the level of the order plane he stood on. When the two were combined, even if he did not use both powers of order together, he appeared to be leaning towards chaos. If order and the power of order were compared to clear water in a transparent cup, he would probably be a transparent cup filled with ink. He was completely black from the inside out. However, the current situation was actually quite good. If you asked him to choose between power and price, he would probably choose price. The suffix was everything that belonged to him, including reincarnation. After all, he had always been such a person. He pursued great power to solve everything that he wanted to solve. However, his concept of power itself was actually so. However, having possessed extraordinary power, how could he be willing to give it all up? He carried the greatest hatred and resentment in this world. If he gave it all up, it would be equivalent to him letting go of everything. And then his existence, where did your mind go again? Yin Nuoxing snapped back to reality, only to see a pure white wing with golden light sweeping across his face. When he realized that everyone was looking at him, he could not help but smile awkwardly. Every time I use the annihilation energy, it's easy to overthink things. Don't mind me. I'll be fine after a while. The girls looked at each other and ran to the side. The observer dimension was an absolutely safe space. They used their own methods to explore the abyssal death mist, the green blood of the sand, and the abyssal death mist of order. They did not take safety seriously and did whatever they wanted. On the other side, Jing Yuanji and Dao Heaven used the abyssal death mist to duplicate the power of the abyssal death mist. One used the power of the abyssal death mist, while the other used the power of the green blood of the sand, and then they started fighting right in front of them. Damn, take it easy, you guys. No one will die in this dimension, but you will experience the process of dying. Damn it. Don't be so heavy-handed with your own people. Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded as he watched the two people who were just discussing a moment ago suddenly start fighting. Jing Yuanji was using the power of the abyssal death mist and the green blood of the sand that Dao Heaven had duplicated to bombard each other. In an instant, there was a rumbling sound of energy vibrations in the dimension. As soon as he finished speaking, Dao Heaven flew out and counterattacked Jing Yuanji, who had been suppressing her power. In a situation where they were just using a power that they were not familiar with, the two of them were actually able to fight to a draw. As soon as he finished watching, Siyu and Yuan Kong were also using the origin energy, borrowed from Yin Nuoxing, to fight the abyssal death mist. The two types of energy of different levels had evolved into 3 or 4 different situations. So far, Yin Nuoxing had not figured out what was going on yet. He also made his move, but in another dimension, he used the origin energy and the green blood of the sand to sandwich the abyssal death mist. Feng Qingwang was also studying the 3 types of energy. The little angel patted Yin Nuoxing's pretty face with her wings and said softly, "They just want to help you. You don't have to say anything." Besides Jing Yuanji, Dao Heaven, Siyu, Green Phoenix, and Yuan Kong all know that they can't help you much in a direct battle. So, they all want to do their best to help you. But there's no need to be so. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the scene of the battle. Little Rain had just been killed by Origin Sky, and she had revived in less than 2 seconds. The two girls gathered together and were discussing something. After a while, they started fighting again. Jing Yuanji and Dao Heaven were still fighting. As they fought, the two of them would hold hands and ponder deeply. Little Blue Phoenix. She had also been killed by the energy she had fused with. So crazy. Experiencing death isn't a good memory. At least use a gentler method. Just let them do what they want. The little angel wrapped Yin Nuoxing's mouth with her wings, making him unable to speak. You may not have paid much attention to these things. The little girls have received countless favors from you. They've been trying to repay you for the past 100 million years. They want to stand by your side and have the qualifications to stand by your side. But just becoming a little stronger is not enough. They know it very well. This is what they added for themselves. They want to bear the responsibility. The little angel whispered in his ear, "It's about time you figured it out. In fact, you know these things better than anyone else. You understand them better than anyone else. It's just that you love them too much. So, you never understand these things. You think this is enough, but you don't know what they think." Yin Nuoxing kept looking at her and listened attentively. In the end, he lowered his eyelids slightly and blinked a few times. Then he turned around and walked to the side, whispering softly, "Who asked you to do this? Isn't it better to just live well, a bunch of fools?" The little angel held her forehead helplessly. Fools? Who's the fool here? She shook her head and looked at the chaotic scene. She could not help but blush a little. Although she knew that she could be resurrected, such a chaotic style was really like little stars. After watching for a while, she also felt a little uncomfortable with this creepy scene. She looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was still struggling with this, and quickly ran over to hug him. She felt that she would become strange if she continued to watch for a while. Studying 2 types of unfamiliar energy was a very long process. At this moment, Yin Nuoxing missed the physique of the spiritual godly physique very much. With the help of that physique to analyze these few types of energy, it would probably be faster than him swallowing a few energy crystals on the spot. He felt a little anorexic from eating energy crystals these days. His stomach, no, his brain was a little digested. By the way, Yin Nuoxing's face was gray. He could not help but let out a long sigh. The abyssal death shroud of order should be a hybrid of order and chaos. The little angel was stunned for a moment. Although this statement was a little weird, it was indeed the meaning. She nodded and glanced at a guy who was lying on the ground in pain. "You're also a hybrid, but it's an acquired one. Yin Nuoxing, having both order and chaos at the same time. All right, hybrid it is." They've been cooped up in the observer dimension for the past few days. They were not worried about the things outside. They had told the little guy from the Demon Gods League that he could call them directly if anything happened. At the same time, he was also monitoring the abyssal death shroud across the void. They did not have to worry about the things outside for the time being. However, he was still a little anxious. The more he wanted to crack the secrets of the green blood of the sand and the abyssal death shroud, the more anxious he felt. It was as if he was doing something bad behind someone's back, and he always felt that that person would suddenly appear behind him like a ghost. The little angel was lying on the ground beside him. She was too lazy to lift her hand. She gently stroked his face with her wings and said, "Take your time. Don't rush. Being too anxious will only make things worse." Yin Nuashing looked at the movement behind him and could not help but sigh. These days, the observer dimension had collected a lot of information about the various energy phenomena occurring here. However, there was nothing that he needed. Recently, he had some doubts. He did not know if this was necessary or not. What if he finally found the mysterious reaction between the abyssal death shroud and the green blood of the sand, which could turn it into order? The condition of the mysterious reaction was as harsh as the grand void reincarnation in advance. Well, he felt that it would not work. Yes, just treat it as a peace of mind or something. Oh, this reason was not bad. Yin Nuashing facepalmed. This reason was really stiff. Chapter 15:15. Order and chaos had been fighting for countless years in the Grand Primordial Realm. Ever since the Grand Primordial Realm was created, the battle between the two types of order had already begun. It would not stop until one side was completely annihilated. In the process, many strange things would happen. For example, let's use his personal experience. Many things that he had experienced and witnessed were the products of the never-ending battle between order and chaos. The abyssal consciousness is you. In fact, you are non-order life forms that are not tolerated by the world of order. However, your strength and the perfection of your own laws allow you to move around in the world of order without being suppressed by any order. This is the same as how order life forms go to the world of chaos. Through your own powerful laws, concepts, and causality, you can block the influence of the rules of order on you. Yin Nuashing sat in the observer space and used an indifferent tone to speak softly to the group of exhausted maidservants. When the maidservants heard this tone and the content, they knew that the Feng family lecture was about to begin again. They all gathered some strength and sat on the ground, listening attentively. "Idiot, you've already said this once. What are you trying to say? Is it related to what we're doing now?" Yuan Kong raised her hand and asked. "You'll know when you listen." Yin Nuashing waved his hand at Yuan Kong and signaled her to calm down. He continued to talk to himself. They in the underworld are also order life forms. I thought that they were also chaos life forms. However, after coming into close contact with them, I'm sure that the living beings in the unfortunate neighbor of the divine realm also belong to the world of order. They can come into close contact with the abyssal death mist, but like us, they can't stay in it for a long time. Then, they created another order life form. He paused deliberately. When they saw his eyes flashing with a thoughtful look, the maidservants knew that he was going to talk about serious matters. They quickly pulled themselves together. Yin Nuashing looked at the space beside him. There was a cage in that space, and the chick that they caught this time was trapped inside. He did not forget about the chick when he was studying the green blood of the sand. Tainted by the abyssal death mist and modified to a certain degree, they are a kind of neutral order created by the underworld. Unlike energy constructs with low intelligence like the abyssal death mist spawn, they possess their own intelligence. Like us, they have a past, a future, and so-called possibilities. If we disregard the part that is tainted by the abyssal death mist, they are actually a life form that could not be any more normal. We must separate them from the rest because they have been tainted by the abyssal death mist. Their order nature has changed, and they are now more inclined towards the chaos plane. They are probably relying on the powerful life force and order nature of the realm of rebirth to forcefully resist the abyssal death mist. The two powers of order are constantly in contact, consuming energy, influencing each other, fusing, and finally stabilizing. The abyssal death mist, which has undergone a second metamorphosis, still has the upper hand of order, which is why they are not of order. The little angel was slightly stunned when she heard that. A second metamorphosis? Yin Nuashing nodded. Asterisk, it is produced when the abyssal death mist and the original power of the green blood of the sand come into contact. The second metamorphosis is when the rebirth mist was used as a material to reforge it. After the first metamorphosis, the abyssal death mist, which had been weakened and distorted by order, had lost its absolute destructive and chaotic nature. Most of the order beings who came into contact with it at that time were in a relatively safe state, but they could not avoid being affected by the abyssal death mist. As he spoke, he stood up and paced around with his hands behind his back. Just now, I used various types of order to come into contact with the chick. It is a life form of the chaos plane, and its structure maintains the characteristics of an order being. Just like other chaos beings, it rejects the rules of order. It can also use its own rules to suppress the discomfort. But the amazing thing is, if it comes into contact with the abyssal death mist for a long time, it will also be affected by it. Then, back to the topic. An order hybrid being who possesses both order and non-order powers or two rules at the same time will actually be repelled by both orders at the same time. Usually, only one of these two conditions exists. Yin Nuashing stopped, his body glowing. I myself am a living example, but I am different from the chick. I am more inclined towards order, and due to various reasons, order itself has no effect on me, and non-order itself has little effect on me. This does not conflict with the fact that I am a chaos being. I am perhaps the most special individual, possessing both order and order at the same time. I also have the rules and concepts of both orders. Order and chaos can be manifested in me alone, or they can exist in a mixture. I think this is the reason why the demonic shadow was surprised by me. Looking at the 8 elemental realms, although the existence of chaos and order at the same time is only theoretical, but the endless void is entangled with countless events, making it difficult for it to not give birth to such an individual. Now, I feel that there is nothing to be surprised about, so I am digressing. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly. It was easy to stray from the topic when talking about order and chaos, and once they strayed, they would stray to the other end of the void. It was as if he could not figure out whether the people in the underworld were humans or not. CU and the others could understand about 70 to 80% of what he said. After all, they were already in the rebirth state and had come into contact with order and chaos quite often. Therefore, after he bombarded them with information, none of them showed any reaction. They were still deep in thought. Yuan Kong looked at them and saw that no one spoke. Before Yin Nuashing could continue, he raised his hand. Big idiot. So what does this have to do with what we are doing today? Mainly because you said it has something to do with it, so I'm very concerned. Don't worry, I was just about to get back to the topic. Yin Nuashing pinched his throat and took a deep breath. Before he could say anything, he laughed bitterly. The main thing is that the things I am thinking about are a little biased, so I have to convince myself first. What I said just now is something that has been in my mind for a long time, and I'm not very sure about it. Everyone, they thought about Yin Nuashing as he spoke. As expected of Yin Nuashing, he said whatever came to his mind. One of the characteristics of the death fog of the abyss is that it can affect order and the big environment of the void. It can transform a region of the void and a region of order into an abyss domain that is more suitable for them, and slowly switch order to chaos. And there is no way to reverse order back without thousands of years of effort. Yin Nuashing took out a cup of tea out of thin air and gulped down a mouthful of tea. He drank the whole pot of tea with an astonishing aura, and in the end, he even let out a joyful sound. The girls, image, my lady observer. Oh, there is no one else here, so it's none of our business. Since the death fog of the abyss has such a characteristic, the fledglings they make should also have the same characteristic. It's just that the fledglings more or less contain order, which should affect the nature of the death fog of the abyss itself. Little girl, don't worry, I'm about to get to the point. If you don't understand these basic things, you'll have to ask all sorts of questions later. Gently rubbing the head of the slightly anxious Yuan Kong, Yin Nuashing continued to walk towards the circle that she had just walked out of. In other words, Those fledglings can be seen as a second weakened version of the death fog of the abyss. At the same time, they also have the characteristics of the death fog of the abyss. They do not do anything good in the void and do nothing but destroy the environment. They will also spread the death fog of the abyss and order to every corner of the void. Yin Nuoxing pinched her fingers, her eyes flashing slightly. With that, there are 5 types of order in the void. Yeah. The girls who had been patiently listening to his lecture just now were stunned when they heard this turn of events that was like jumping off a cliff. Yin Nuoxing obviously saw a bold and black question mark on their faces. Even Jing Yuanji was stunned and couldn't react for a while. It was like teaching them how to walk and run a second ago, and the next second, he began to explain a lot of rules for the birth of the world. Other than being stunned, they couldn't show any other expression at all. Yin Nuoxing looked as if he had expected this. He turned to Feng Qing Huang, who was trying to organize her thoughts, and smiled gently. "Little girl Feng, have you figured it out?" Feng Qing Huang was stunned for a moment. Her jade-like hands ran through her hair in a panic. The expression on her face changed several times and finally settled on a half-confused and half-understanding expression. "I might have guessed it, but little star, you should say it." Yin Nuoxing looked at Jing Yuanji again. Seeing that she was about to figure it out, he paused for a moment and then said, "There are 4 types of order: pure chaos, pure order, and order that tends towards chaos, chaos that tends towards order. The last one is still brewing." Jing Yuanji made a small "oh" sound. Her thoughts were confirmed, and she calmed down instantly. She even could not help but smile faintly. However, the other girls were still confused. Dao Heaven was even a little irritable as she played with her long hair. She bared her teeth at Yin Nuoxing and said, "Don't keep us in suspense. Just say it. I can't think it through." Yin Nuoxing shrugged and said, "The chaotic void that represents pure chaos, the upper plane that represents pure order, and the order that tends towards chaos that the underworld created using the abyssal death mist, the lower plane. The void battlefront that we are guarding now, the middle plane. The last one is the neutral order that has yet to take shape in the void. It belongs to both orders and is rejected by both orders, me and the fledglings that the underworld created." After listening to him slowly finish speaking, the maidservants pondered for a while before letting out a long. It seemed that they had understood everything. Then they suddenly understood why it took him so long to say this. If he hadn't directly said this at the beginning, they would definitely have asked a lot of questions and messed up a lot of the order. Jing Yuanji nodded slightly. Her thoughts were similar to what Lord Feng had said, except for the last one. "But Lord Feng, this should be the situation in the void that they accidentally created, right?" "Accidentally?" Yin Nuoxing shook his head. "I think it's deliberate. The way things have developed today is exactly what the underworld wants. Or rather, they single-handedly arranged and facilitated the void's current development, and it would not be far off even if there is a deviation. The spawned sanctum that fills the void is a distorted creation that they use to cultivate the abyssal consciousness. Its existence has also turned the entire lower plane and the edge of the middle plane into order that tends towards chaos. That environment is suitable for them to torment the abyssal death mist and play their little tricks. The void of order has lost its usual stability, exposing many loopholes that they could exploit. Then, they used the sanctum derived with the law of order and the abyssal death mist to come into contact with another type of divine destruction power, and obtained a weakened version of the abyssal death mist. Lass, you were with me that day when they were collecting that stuff." The little angel paused for a moment and then recalled 100 million years ago. Then she realized that it was the day he blew up the carrier of divinity. It was when they spied on what she and Bei Hao were doing. So they were collecting a weakened version of the abyssal death mist that had been corrupted by order power. Just one step, and they managed to advance their plans by leaps and bounds. I really don't believe it if they did not pull hair and plan behind the scenes for millions of years. Yin Nuoxing folded her arms and turned to lean on the air. putting aside those branching products, the underworld seems to have been blurring the boundary between order and chaos since the beginning, allowing them to get closer. Originally, order should be order, and chaos would definitely be chaos. There has never been such a strange thing as order and chaos. As for me, it's my own doing, exchanging a few lives for some weird talents and skills. But I'm just a special case, so it's not a big problem. Still, the underworld seems to be able to mass-produce such hybrid life forms. Although the fledglings made from the second mutated abyssal death mist are not as powerful as the fledglings made from origin energy and annihilation energy like mine, they are still able to outnumber them. Seeing that the topic was about to deviate, Feng Qing Huang quickly said, "Little star, you didn't mention the 5 types of order on a whim, did you?" Yin Nuoxing nodded and glanced at the green blood of the sand and the abyssal death mist. After a moment of silence, she said, "They want to reshape the void. Not all of it, but at least a region of the void. They want to reshape it. Theoretically, it's possible, but it's very troublesome and complicated. Whether it's creating a void that's different from the current one, or simply conquering a region and reshaping it into the way they want, it's all possible. While I'm teaching you, I've also deduced 9 quadrillion times in the observer space. Hui and I have joined hands to directly distort the order of the void. The success rate is not less than 20%. There are more primeval gods in the underworld, so the success rate is at least 20%. And if the core of the primordial realm is included, the success rate may be as high as 70%. If we were to change to another model of deduction and judgment, their conditions would be more or less met. A void where the resistance of order is weak, a power that can distort and replace the order of the void, and a large enough net of order. You see, now that I've put it this way." Yin Nuoxing was silent for a moment. She took a deep breath and said, "If that's the case, the situation is very bad. If reshaping the void is indeed their plan, then there are only 2 reasons why they haven't done anything to the void yet. First, they're still looking for the core of the primordial realm. No matter how high the success rate is, it's not as satisfying as having the core of the primordial realm. After all, reshaping the void still has a failure rate, and if things go wrong, the entire void might collapse. Second, they don't care about the core of the primordial realm and want to do it themselves. But now, they feel that their territory is still too small, so they don't want to do it. Plus, they seem to have stopped fighting now." Jing Yuanji suddenly spoke, attracting the attention of others. In other words, the underworld is indeed looking for the core of the primordial realm. Theoretically, that's the case. There are already a lot of guesses that all point to this point. The only thing left is probably some problems in the details. Yin Nuoxing stood up straight and spread her hands. So far, a lot of what has been said is just a theory. If the guesses are right, we can take action against their plan. If the guesses are wrong, then it doesn't matter. We can just take this guess as their plan and guard against it. No matter what, according to the current situation and the current intelligence, the possibility of reshaping the void is no less than 50%. Yin Nuoxing's right hand touched the cold sand blue blood. Her eyes flickered slightly. If we want to fight against them, first of all, we need to understand them. We even need to transform ourselves into them. We need to use their thinking to think, to search, to trace back to the source of these things, and what they plan to do, what they have grasped, what they know, Lord of the Underworld. The atmosphere suddenly dropped below the freezing point because of the appearance of these 4 words. Yin Nuoxing and the other maidservants looked at each other for a moment and shuddered inexplicably. This title was really scary. It would definitely suffocate them if it was suddenly mentioned at this time. Thinking carefully about the voice just now, everyone was stunned. These 4 words did not seem to be spoken by someone here. Yin Nuoxing suddenly rolled her eyes. She pointed at the voice just now in her soul and said, "Can you not eavesdrop?" There was a dry laugh from the soul transmission. Then, a bright voice with sunshine suddenly sounded. "Aya, I'm looking for you. I heard you were talking about some very serious topics when I found you. It was not good to interrupt, so I had to wait until now to say it." Yin Nuoxing looked at the old guardian and sighed in annoyance. The problem is that your timing is too perfect. Why? What's wrong with the Lord of the Underworld? By the way, why are you looking for me? It hasn't been long, right? Something happened at the front line of the void? The Lord of the Underworld, the mastermind behind the scenes that we have to deal with. He's the one who started all of this, so we can't involve him in anything, including the reshaping of the void, the evolution of the sanctum, and all those other trivial matters. Let's get down to business. Maple, you've been holed up in the observer space for at least 6 days now. These few days, the front line has been peaceful, but there's a little hiccup on our side. A gift was thrown to us by the wrong place. Now, it's been corrected and someone is sending it to you. I think it should arrive tomorrow, so I'm telling you in advance. The beginning of the plan, huh? You've given me a new idea. Don't tell me that the reason he reshaped the void is because something happened to him? What the hell is a gift? What did you throw at me? The problem with the Lord of the Underworld? Yeah, I think I've heard from you and your wife. Bayhouse said that the clan leader was severely injured when he went to capture the component of the abyssal death shroud, right? Ha! Phone, do you think that guy wanted to create a neutral order because his order was destroyed? You'll know when the gift arrives. Wait a little longer, it'll arrive tomorrow. There won't be any surprises if I tell you in advance. That's probably the cause and core of the incident. But we won't make much progress, even if we keep guessing. Let's talk about it later. Now, we have to get through the abyssal death shroud first, or we won't even know why we died. You didn't throw me something weird, did you? Well, who knows? We'll know when the time comes. We grinned and kept them in suspense. Yeah, when the time comes. Yin Nwashing sighed softly. The girls were going crazy. If there was no tacit understanding in terms of epochs, who could talk about two topics at the same time, without stopping, and in both with a single sentence? Chapter 15:16. If the underworld wanted to reshape the void, they had to first eliminate order. Well, there was no need to eliminate order. There were only two or one options: order that was close to chaos or neutral order. The former was contrary to their sudden cessation of war in action. Therefore, after much consideration, Yin Nwashing still believed that they intended to rebuild a void with neutral order, a world that did not belong to order and was also contrary to chaos. It was a world that was only gray. To achieve this, they have to obtain the core of the primordial realm. After packing up the things in the observer space, Yin Nwashing led a group of maidservants towards the city wall. The guardian of the core of the primordial realm is in contact with us. That guy can't even find the core of the 8 primordial realm that suddenly ran away. So, the remaining way, they can only obtain the core of the primordial realm from the lower realm. Under the protection of the god of origin, it won't be that easy for them to reach the lower primordial realm. Although due to the existence of the shadow's information, the other cores of the primordial realm can indeed be used. We responded in the soul, but after all, those places are only partly similar to the 8 primordial realm. Are they really useful? She said that they are useful, but if they want to use the cores of the other primordial realms to do something to the 8 primordial realm, the effect will definitely be worse. As for how bad the effect will be, it's hard to tell. I've never seen that thing before, so it's hard to deduce. The part of the information I got from her is only related to the core of the 8 primordial realm. However, even if there is a difference, it can still increase the success rate by a lot. And if they can get the other 7 cores of the primordial realm, we took a deep breath and felt a little shocked. I'm shocked. If we can collect the other 7 cores of the primordial realm, then no matter how bad the effect is, the effect won't be much worse than the original core of the primordial realm. Yin Nwashing and the others stood on the city wall. He looked up at the black and crimson wall in the distance, like a giant beast that was lying on the ground motionless. Looking at the void, he could not help but let out a long sigh. Perhaps it's time to turn our attention to the other primordial realms. I have to make some preparations with the power of origin. The heavenly gods of the primordial beginning would definitely be suppressed by the power of origin, but that powerful realm would allow them to maintain considerable strength even when suppressed. No matter how weak they are, they would not be killed by the beings of the lower realms, unless they are swarmed to death. About that, Phone, you don't have to worry. Hui suddenly showed a mysterious smile when he heard that. It was a smile that made people want to slap him. It's because I'm worried that such a thing will happen that I have slightly adjusted the power of origin. Now, even if the heavenly gods of the primordial beginning were to cross realms, they would be suppressed like a grandson. The only thing they can rely on is their own uniqueness, just like you, Foam. But seeing that they are planning to mass produce the fledgling primordial, I think there's no need to worry about that. That's good, Yin Nuashing replied. Suddenly, she felt that something was wrong. She looked at Hui silently and said calmly, "Wait, when did you tamper with the power of origin? You can even interfere with the things left behind by the heavenly gods of the primordial beginning now? TCH, it's something that happened thousands of years ago. Back then, there was a period of time when the battle wasn't intense. It was then that I tampered with it. As for directly interfering with it, you think too much of me." Hui laughed dryly and scratched his head. "It's just because I've entered the realm of primordial and used the uniqueness of the realm of the gods as the core of the power of origin to exploit a little loophole." Yin Nuashing was silent for a long time. Then, she said softly, "I think you should be lucky that you were not killed by the power of origin and the order of origin. The danger of this operation was no less than the foundation of the grand primordial realm. If you make a big fuss in the corner of your own building, you might accidentally tear down the load-bearing wall, and you'll be done for." And judging from Huey's words and actions that he did behind Yin Nuashing's back, this guy's desire to die might be very strong. "Hey, how did you know that I've been entangled by the power of origin?" Hui suddenly laughed out loud. "I had expected this to happen. I was prepared to use your power of origin to get through this difficulty. So nothing happened. Wait a minute. My power of origin? Where did you get the power of origin from me?" Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked puzzled. She could not remember when this happened. Or was it that the 100 million years of war had blown his brain and he automatically ignored such a small thing? Don't think that they were very far away from each other. It would only take a second to open a portal to get there. Maybe it was because he solved it too quickly that his brain was muddled and forgot. That was before the war. Once you were sleeping, I got a little bit of power of origin that you've adapted to. Hiss. I suddenly remembered that there's still a deadly matter in the chaotic void. I'm very sorry. I have to go on a business trip for a while. I Ching, help me to hold the fort. Jing Yuanji and the others bang. Just as the girls were speechless, they saw a black hole that was about 10 feet wide explode beside them. The blue and dark red energy light formed an energy vortex that overflowed with a chaotic aura in the air. As for Yin Nuashing, he had already disappeared. The maidservants sucked in a deep breath. She was going to capture the Lord Guardian, who had a loose tongue. A minute later, Yin Nuashing jumped out of the vortex with black lines on his forehead. Looking at the sinister smile on her face, she knew that it was probably. Siyu could not help but come forward and poked Yin Nuashing's face with her finger. Caught. Yin Nuashing's face twitched and her sinister expression collapsed. She waved her hand weakly. "She's too slippery. She ran away as soon as I arrived. She's still in the chaotic void. I don't know where she's hiding. She's really a meat shield. She can tank and run away. Even I'm ashamed of my speed in escaping." Yesterday, Hui said that he had some gifts to send here. When they were chatting just now, he found out that it should be arriving soon. That was why he brought the whole family here to collect the gifts. While they were still waiting, before the gifts arrived, another person came. A series of light footsteps attracted the attention of Yin Nuashing and the others. The person seemed to be passing by casually and was not coming for them. However, they still turned their heads collectively. They saw a teenager in a golden robe strolling leisurely on the city wall alone. When he saw a group of people gathered in front of him, he was stunned. He raised his head and could not help but exclaim, "Hey, you've only rested for 6 or 7 days, and you're already out. Don't you need to rest for a while more? Anyway, the front line doesn't seem to be fighting now." The person who came was naturally the leader of the Demon Gods Alliance. He skipped in front of Yin Nuashing and raised his head to look at her for a while. He then jumped to the battlements at the side and looked at her at the same level. He even waved his hand and heaved a sigh of relief. "It's too tiring to talk to you. My neck hurts when I raise my head. Yin Nuashing and the others. Weren't you the one who made your body so small? Don't mind these details. Don't mind it. The teenager grinned a few times. I haven't talked about you yet. Why are you here? I'm here to collect the goods. Huibai said that there was something that was supposed to be sent to us. However, it was thrown to them. I don't know what the goods are. Yin Nuashing spread his hands and said softly. Suddenly, he remembered something. By the way, I've been busy with something else for the past few days. I almost forgot about this. How's the situation in the world of order now? The accumulated power and such. At the mention of this, the leader of the Demon Gods Alliance and Jing Yuanji's expressions changed. Jing Yuanji coughed dryly and cleared her throat. Then, she reported attentively. Compared to the beginning of the war 100 million years ago, there are now more worlds joining the Void frontline. Most of those worlds are aware of the dangers of the Abyssal Death Shroud in advance, or worlds that have already been damaged by the Abyssal Death Shroud. Their participation is expected, especially in the past few days when you were away. Perhaps it's a rare moment when the war stopped. During this period of peace, more people brought their worlds and entered the Void frontline. Yin Nuashing twirled his long hair and glanced at the city. Then he nodded seriously. I think they're all unfamiliar faces. Everyone was speechless. After all, this big boss did not care about anything else and only cared about fighting. It was understandable that he did not know anyone. We've all moved our hometowns to the front line. After all these years of fighting, we've lost a lot of people. There are also some who are slowly recuperating. These few days, we've confirmed with other nodes in the Void frontline. As for manpower, we're not short for the time being. We can still maintain a high-intensity battle for a long time. It's just that the leader of the Demon Gods Alliance scratched his chin and kicked his short legs on the battlements. Yin Nuashing glanced at him. There's no way to make up for the loss of high-level combat forces. The cultivation of combat forces in the world of order is too slow. In theory, we'll be isolated and without help at the end of the war. Jing Yuanji and the leader of the Demon Gods Alliance both sighed. That's right. Yin Nuashing was helpless. The loss of every high-level god was a loss of flesh and blood. One less god meant one less god. Trying to make up for it in a short period of time was simply nonsense. 100 million years might be able to create countless reincarnation realm experts. King tier, reincarnation realm experts. Emperor tier, saint tier, and god tier. However, if he wanted to nurture a heavenly god, even if he did it himself, he could only help a small number of people directly ascend to this realm. For example, Siyu and Qing Huang. However, the conditions at the Void frontline were not very good. If he were to leisurely play with these two little girls in the Divine Realm, no. If he were to nurture them seriously, they should be just one step away from becoming heavenly gods. As for the heavenly god of origin, that was no different from nonsense. It was simply too difficult. There was no heavenly god of origin whose lifespan was not measured in epochs. When he and Hui first arrived at the origin, they both had 2 or 3 epochs of lifespan. No matter how heaven-defying the two of them were, they could not do something that went against the laws of the Void. Oh, no, they could indeed do it. They could mass-produce a batch of low-level heavenly gods of origin, but they would not have any future. However, low-level heavenly gods of origin could still be used for a while. Once the tide of darkness receded and the underworld brought their entire family into the Void, they would not be able to deal with it. Feng Qing Huang was stunned for a moment when she saw the smoke rising from Yin Nuashing's head. She quickly condensed energy into a fan and fanned it over his head. Ugh, I'm so anxious. Yin Nuashing twirled his bangs and sighed continuously. What a headache. If we can't even get past the tide of darkness, how can we even talk about the main battlefield later? I suspect that hundreds of heavenly gods of origin will rush out from behind. Judging from how crazy the underworld is, it is entirely possible that they can do that. Moreover, if they can use the weakened abyssal death mist to nurture unreliable heavenly gods of origin, they can also nurture heavenly gods of origin. Who can tell me how to fight this battle? Everyone was silent. Although the observer always made the problem sound very serious and ridiculous, sometimes such ridiculous and impossible things just happened. They cannot be stopped. They were the lost races of the mythological era. The underworld had no less tricks up their sleeves than the celestial realm. The Pantheon realm had been ravaged by the final war, and almost nothing was left behind. Although they were both lost races, they were two completely different concepts. One left behind an entire race, while the other left behind a shell. The new things that were born on the shell had nothing to do with the previous era at all. There's a way. Cough, cough. Phone, calm down. I was wrong. We're talking about something serious. Another voice rang out in Feng Qing Huang's soul. Yin Nuoxing was furious. He waved his hand and opened the door. Hui was so frightened that he quickly begged for mercy. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and calmly closed the portal. He crossed his arms and replied in Feng Qing Huang's soul, "Tell me, what do you have in mind?" The first way is to forcibly conscript all heavenly god tier and above forces in the void of order. Looking at the void, there are still many worlds that have not joined in. Although we have said that we don't want to fight if we don't want to, the situation now is far more serious than we thought. We need to take some measures. If we don't think of something, are we really going to die together with the world of order? We looked around. He looked at the void where he was and said, "I have briefly observed the situation in the void. 55% of the void of order's power is gathered in the void frontline. 55% of the void of order's power is still scattered in the void of order. Those that have not been discovered are not included. Back then, the timeline resonance had pulled more than 10,000 timeline worlds into the origin world. There are definitely a lot of worlds that are still hidden in the void of order that have not been discovered. Even the underworld has not discovered them. We can perform a concept resonance on the void and timeline to capture those worlds that are hidden in the corners of the void. As for the other worlds, we can only slowly cultivate high-level life forms. Otherwise, what else can we do? The life forms that we cultivate are not reliable, and they are not of much use. Yin Nuoxing was rubbing his bangs so hard that it was about to catch fire. He thought for a moment and nodded slightly. Okay, but let's put this method aside for now. Is there a second and third method? The second one is related to your gift. Let's not talk about this first. Oh, by the way, your goods will be here in less than 5 minutes. Hui grinned evilly. Okay, is there a third method? Yin Nuoxing sighed. Hui was determined to keep him in suspense. He was itching to do so. The third method is actually the best method. There is no need to work hard. It can also be done perfectly. It can probably be done perfectly to get through the crisis. Huey's expression suddenly became serious. Yin Nuoxing wanted to remind him that the destructive war at the end of the Dark Age was an established fact. But he could never open his mouth to remind him. He could only listen awkwardly and reply indifferently. He also wanted to hear what the so-called best method was. Hui pondered for a moment and looked at Yin Nuoxing with an extremely serious gaze. Feng, you just have to enter the realm of Yuanshi. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. His expression quickly changed. After a moment, he calmed down and shook his head. Impossible. That's true. Hui couldn't help but smile bitterly. They couldn't find any other way at the moment. After so many years, they still couldn't find any other way. The recovery speed of the divinity carrier was infinitely close to zero. It would probably take dozens of years for it to be repaired. Siyu looked at Yin Nuoxing, whose expression was slightly gloomy. He couldn't bear it. Lord Hui, even you can't do anything? Hui shook his head helplessly. Every realm in the reincarnation state has to be explored by oneself to find the most suitable path for oneself. High-level gods can give low-level gods guidance and help, but the gap between the origin and the realm of Yuanshi is a bit. I can't talk about the problem of this realm. I only know that I can't guide Feng to this realm. If Feng could enter the realm of Yuanshi, this war would have ended long ago. We couldn't hide his disappointment and sighed. The guy called Qing Shi was really powerful. He broke the most powerful sword in the Void of Order. Although the consequence was that he paid the price. In Huey's opinion, it was completely worth it. Well, his thoughts had gone astray. Feng, How's your control of the origin energy now? Have you found a second path? Hui asked subconsciously. As soon as he asked, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. If there was really a way, he wouldn't have said the word impossible just now. It's difficult. Yin Nuashing sighed again and shook his head helplessly. The origin energy, I have precisely grasped 64 types. There are more than 10 types that I have just started to touch. But to talk about complete control is impossible. My divine power, laws, and concepts can't support me to that level. Otherwise, I would have hung you up and beaten you up. You can press me to the ground and beam me up now. There's no need to say it again. Hui listened blankly and suddenly felt that his rebuttal wasn't quite right. He instantly stomped his foot. We agreed not to talk about this. Being pressed down and rubbed against the ground is a completely different experience from being hung in the air. Cough, cough. I'll say it for the last time. Seeing Huey's face turn green, Yin Nuashing also secretly smiled and let out a sigh. Don't use me as a unit of combat power. Hui scratched his head in distress. I'm just a meat shield. Just tell me what level of power you can deal with, if you can fully grasp it. It's not a problem for me to guard the entire void of order. I can even directly clear all the abyssal death mist in the void. Yin Nuashing did not hesitate and did not feel that he was exaggerating. Then he smiled bitterly. But that's impossible. Without reaching primeval, my control over the origin energy would not improve by another level. Even if I did reach that level, it would take a lot of effort. Everyone's hopes that had just been rekindled were instantly dashed. Their excitement was all for nothing. The Young Alliance master shrugged helplessly. If the realm of the gods can't solve it, we probably can't either. Not to mention that we're still a little bit away from the pinnacle of origin. I've never heard of anyone entering the primeval realm before. Hui smiled bitterly. Infinitely close to primeval. In layman's terms, his entire body was standing on the side of primeval. Only half of his hair was left behind. He was truly half a step. Bah, the pinnacle of origin. Well, I'm not going to repeat myself. After all, there should be a lot of people who encountered this in the previous era. If I don't say a few words, how can I highlight Maple's uniqueness? Let's not worry about this for now. Your goods have arrived. Remember to check it. I'm going to inspect the realm of order. We suddenly changed the topic and laughed sinisterly. Yin Nuashing felt that something was wrong. Crazy. After replying, Yin Nuashing and the others stood there and waited quietly for a minute. Suddenly, they sensed that something was floating up from the depths of the void. They immediately turned their eyes. Two slender figures emerged from the void, accompanied by the crisp sound of silver rings swaying. A moment later, the two figures condensed and took form. One was a beautiful girl wearing a snow-white robe with a silver ring on her hand, while the other had a layer of frost on her face. Her beautiful face looked as if it was frozen. When Siyu saw her, she couldn't help but mutter in a voice that only she could hear, 10,000 years facial paralysis, iceberg girl. Yin Nuashing looked at the two familiar women in front of him and was slightly stunned. He frowned and thought for a moment. He looked at the woman in white and suddenly remembered that she had lived in his soul for a period of time. Qingyu, why are you here? As for the one beside him, who are you again? Everyone. Yin Nuashing didn't realize it until the 10,000-year-old expressionless woman said the words void holy court to him with a bitter smile in her heart and a cold expression. Min, it's you. You also came here. I have something to do. I found a guardian, and he told me to come and find you. On the way, I saw Qingyu who was going to find you, so I brought her along. Min nodded helplessly with a stiff face. What's the matter? Something in the void. Min looked up at Yin Nuashing and said, I want to invite you to go with me. Chapter 15-17. Yin Nuashing only wanted to say that he was already used to Min saying that Min was looking for him if he had any problems. That was the truth. The void itself was a troublesome place, an amalgamation of huge events. What was going to happen? He had said enough. What Yin Nuashing wanted to say was that he was already used to it when Min said that he was looking for him if he had any problems. Wait a moment. Yin Nuashing reached out to stop the topic that was about to be triggered. She looked for Shang Hui Soul Seed and said, "Now that the people are here, the tubes that you should be selling should be sold out. Let's continue the topic. What is the second method that you mentioned?" As he spoke, Yin Nuoxing's voice gradually became softer, and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Speaking of Qing Yu, he thought of that place, that void, that space created by the distorted race, that world used to store countless experimental subjects. He remembered that large world seemed to be a world filled with heavenly gods, and in the last void he came into contact with, there were many heavenly gods of origin. Could those distorted life forms be the ones that Hui mentioned? I told you that you don't need me to say anything. I'll throw some things in front of you. You know it better than anyone else. That's it. I only thought of it when Qingyu came. I'll let Qingyu tell you the rest. I'm busy here. Hui's voice suddenly sounded in his soul like a ghost, causing Yin Nuoxing to shudder violently. He turned his head to look at the girl who was always calm with a smile on her pretty face. Just as he was about to say something to that ghost-like guy, that guy had already cut off the transmission without saying a word, and even sealed the transmission for some unknown reason. All right, Qingyu, we said that you brought me some good news. Yin Nuoxing coughed. She was about to look at Siyu and the others when she saw that Dao Tian was pulling the other girls back with an ambiguous look on her face. She left the three of them alone and was whispering something in their ears. Feng Qing Wang and the others were also looking at them strangely. Qingyu responded to this situation with an expression that would never change in 10,000 years. She smiled faintly and said, "It was young Master Shin's idea. However, I'm mainly here to catch up with you. I'm here to see you." Looking at me? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She scratched her head and said, "What are you looking at me for? Are you looking at me when I fought the abyssal death mist in the front line of the void until my brain almost exploded?" Qingyu smiled when she heard this. "It seems that you've really had a hard time these past few years. Our side isn't exactly peaceful either, but generally speaking, it's much easier than yours." Qingyu paused for a moment, her expression turning serious as she spoke in a reporting tone. "The unification of our race and theirs just came to an end not too long ago. It took a little effort to sort things out, but overall, it went very smoothly. There weren't many losses, and there weren't any side issues. The internal unification is over, and the two races live in the same void. There are a total of 10,922 worlds, and there are innumerable Empyrean gods and Empyrean gods. Then, young Master Shin asked me to ask you two things. The first is about them. We want to come to the Void front lines to help, and he wants to know if you need any arrangements." Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment. "No, the war just ended and we need to recuperate, and you guys are here to make do. Well, logically speaking, I'm very happy to have a new force joining us. However, your situation is different from ordinary worlds. You've just been unified, and the enmity between each other for countless years has just ended. It's not good to be involved in the biggest quagmire in the void now. If something goes wrong, the whole one race that has just been unified would be wiped out." Qingyu smiled and stroked her long hair. "I've discussed it with young Master Shin and confirmed it with our people before making such a decision. This is also a good place for our race. In the past, the destruction caused by the distorted clan to the void could be ignored in this endless chaotic situation, but those things can't be eliminated. There won't be changes because of the change of decision-makers. That's a shadow we can never get rid of. Whether it's for ourselves or for the void, we have to do this." Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and pulled at his hair that hung down to his waist. After a while, he stopped. He could not say anything about reason, nor was he in a position to say anything. Since it was a decision that they had discussed, then so be it. "All right, I'll tell you about the arrangements when the time comes. I won't hide it from you guys. The front line of the void is really lacking in strength right now, especially strength that can survive this endless war and still stand in the void to continue fighting." Qingyu smiled and nodded slightly. "Then, the second thing, we'd like to ask the Lord Observer to give our race a name." Yin Nuoxing's face stiffened for a moment. He then grinned bitterly. "No, can't you let we decide for you? The Lord Guardian said to let the Lord Observer come up with a name." Qingyu said seriously. Yin Nuoxing's face that had just relaxed tensed up again. Since they used those words to address him, then it meant that they wanted to officially name a race to declare their existence. As the most authoritative figure in the Order Void, although the authoritative figure came out of nowhere, it was better to say that it was more famous. As the enforcer of the most famous world in the Order Void, it was not a problem for him to do this. There would not be a big difference. It would not make much difference whether he or young Master Shun came up with the name. They probably just wanted to use his name to prove something. Those words were said by Tsang Hui. He did not remember the original words. As for the meaning, that was what it meant. In the words of the realm of the gods, it was a matter of legitimacy. The legitimacy here was the legitimacy of the realm of the gods. Yin Nuoxing used 5 seconds to finish thinking. He suddenly grabbed a name that he seemed to have heard before and blurted out, the Divine Shadow Clan. This is the name I gave to your race, accompanied by the name of the realm of the gods. It is not a very good name, as the literal meaning is, you are just the shadow of the realm of the gods. But from what I see, you probably don't want a proper name that is too sharp. That will do. It is a good name. Qingyu nodded. Just as she said, they were using their current actions to make up for the sins they had committed in the past. That was a mark that could not be removed from the Divine Shadow Clan. But at least they wanted to make up for it a little, so that their name would not still be notorious in the void in the future. An act of atonement. He could more or less understand, so he would fulfill their wish. But the void was really strange. Qingyu's race was originally a distorted life form created by Chong Kong and the others. They did not start from scratch. Instead, they plundered the life forms of order from the void and forcefully modified them. Until now, they had not been able to recover the lost memories. There was no way. Oh, so that's it. He suddenly understood why things had developed to this point. Originally, the distorted race had abducted missing people from various parts of the void for their long-cherished wishes and plans. Or they had simply packed up an entire world and brought them away. But one day, the person who had treated them as part of their plan had suddenly fallen. These people who had been beaten back to square one and lived in their own new worlds needed to be dealt with a little. The best way was to have them return to where they came from. But since none of them had lost their memories, they naturally could not go back. Instead, the entire world they knew was the place they were living in right now. They would only have those experimental worlds for the rest of their lives. Where would they go? That would only be more troublesome. So, the missing people of the void and their descendants who were already living in those worlds did not need to think too much. They could only make arrangements where they were. Besides, even if young Master Shun and Qingyu had told everyone the truth, there would not be much change. None of them had the memories before they were abducted. The truth was just a story that they could not understand. And what was happening in the world they were living in now was the reality they knew. They had lived there for countless years, and their bloodline and descendants have been passed down for thousands of generations, or even more. Coupled with the big picture of those worlds that were in turmoil, most of the people who were still alive had already become the natives of those worlds, except for the first generation who were still alive. Instead of dwelling on the memories and history that had been washed away, it was better to just hold on to the reality that they had now grasped and continue to live in those worlds. After all, they had already gotten used to life in those worlds. They had their own unique way of life and did not have to adapt to any other environment. Now that the Twisted Clan was no longer controlling them from behind the scenes, the world that they lived in had become more beautiful and peaceful. There were no chaotic periods and chaotic tides in the world, and there were no meaningless and inexplicable wars and disputes. Living here sounded pretty good. It was just that they were so used to war that they could not help but want to come to the edge of the world to fight the abyssal death mist. Sai, he was not joking. The Divine Shadow Clan was really unlucky. They had been in internal strife for 3 eras. Although it was a one-sided internal strife, some things in the dark had never stopped. It was only until this era that they completely stabilized. The decision-maker had changed. The first heavenly god of the primeval beginning had fallen, and the former divine child of their clan had taken over the heavy responsibility. They had not even had a few days of peace before the threat of the abyssal death mist was pressing on their chest again, suffocating the entire world of order. Keep. The voice of the little angel rang in his mind in a timely manner, causing Yin Nuashing to tremble violently. The funeral of the original distorted clan and their goods, the Divine Shadow clan, had come to an end just like that. It could be said that they had completed the things that they did not have time to deal with 100 million years ago. At that time, the Abyssal Death Mist army was pressing on the border, and they did not have the leisure to manage a remote world that had just completed the transition of power. Yin Nuashing coughed softly and turned his head to look at Min. All right, Qing Yu's matter is done. It's time to talk about your matter. What do you want to do again? Min had been listening from the side. With this woman's intelligence, she should know what had happened. However, she did not say anything and only listened calmly. Now that she realized that the topic had turned to her, she spoke with a faint and cold voice. We found a secret place in the void. The aura of that secret place is very strange. There are many things that we cannot understand. We want you to come with us and have a look. Huh? Yin Nuashing replied dryly and turned his head to look at Jing Yuanji and the young Alliance Master. How's the situation recently? The Abyssal Death Mist is safe. Everything is stable in the Abyssal Death Mist. It is as long as the Divine Realm. 12 days, 11 hours, and 9 minutes. There is no change in the energy. When I finished this sentence, it was exactly 9 minutes. Min replied with a faint chill. Her precise calculation left everyone speechless. She looked up slightly at Yin Nuashing, her pair of black eyes that were as empty as it had an unusually serious expression. Before I came out, I had already prepared everything. I had already assigned the front line that I was guarding to the others. I also told them that if I could not return, I would choose someone to take over my position. I had also arranged for the support personnel. Under the heavy pressure of the Abyssal Death Mist, there would not be anyone or anything that would cause trouble, other than being unable to predict the movements of the Abyssal Death Mist. Everything else had been planned. You've really prepared well. Yin Nuashing laughed dryly. The arrangement of authority and hiding behind the scenes was really well practiced, and it also felt a little familiar to him. Don't worry. It won't delay the important matters. If nothing unexpected happens, it shouldn't take much time. Min said seriously. No, I didn't say that. Yin Nuashing was interrupted before he could finish. The void coordinates have been set. There will be no trouble in the journey. Even if there is something urgent, we can return at once. It might take 4 to 5 days to investigate. So, it's a matter of great importance. I hope you can help. That secret realm was originally a space within one of my worlds. It has suddenly undergone an unknown change. Its space has expanded to an unimaginable extent, blurring the boundary between the dimensional barrier and the real world. It has swallowed the space of the entire world, and if we don't stop it, it might dig out a piece of the void. Please. 2 green veins popped out on Yin Nuashing's forehead, and he slapped Min's little mouth to stop that string of threatening words. All right. Wait for me to finish. I didn't say that I won't go. Min's red lips moved, and he calmly took a step back. He continued to stare at Yin Nuashing. So, observer, Yin Nuashing had a headache and held his forehead. He didn't expect that this seemingly cold 10,000-year-old iceberg with facial paralysis could say so many things that even he couldn't stand. The main point was that he couldn't even get the right to speak. He talked to himself all day long, and today his mouth was stuffed by someone else. Go. Go and take a look. This time, all of you should go and take a look. Just treat it as going out to see the strange things that happened in the void. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief and turned to look at the little angel and Jing Yuanji. The last sentence was directed at them. I won't go. I don't like to run around when I'm guarding the front line. The young Alliance Master jumped down from the battlements and patted the dust on his clothes. You guys go. I'll keep an eye on the situation at the front line. If anything happens, I'll contact you immediately. All right. Yin Nuashing nodded and turned his head, saying, We don't need to make any preparations, ba-bang. Before he could finish speaking, the space around him trembled, and Yin Nuashing was dumbfounded. The other girls, on the other hand, were indifferent. No, they hadn't recovered from Yin Nuashing's mouth being stuffed by someone else. At this moment, They saw a large hole in the void suddenly appear in front of them, and they were even more dumbfounded. Yin Nuashing was also speechless. It wasn't that he hadn't seen girls with high mobility, but he had never seen a girl who could use swift thunder and swift wind as a passive skill. Based on the time she took to prepare, the speed at which she opened the door, and the speed at which she stuffed him with words, Yin Nuashing would believe her if she said that she had more preparations. I'll go and confirm the situation first. Min turned around and plunged into the large hole in the void after saying that, leaving Yin Nuashing and the others looking at each other with dumbfounded expressions. The young Alliance Master came back to his senses and cupped his fists at Yin Nuashing and the others. I wish you all a smooth journey. We'll take care of the back line, so don't worry. Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he waved his hand and sighed. Then, he turned around and jumped into the void with his girls. The young Alliance Master watched as the hole disappeared bit by bit and let out a long sigh of relief. He held the back of his head with both hands and walked into the void. He suddenly thought of something. The Lord Guardian had something to do, and the Lord Observer was taken away by his own family. Although the two lords weren't at the front line of the void for a while, he felt more flustered this time. I have a feeling that something bad is going to happen in the void again. The young Alliance Master turned his head and looked at the giant wall. After a moment, he sighed and shook his head. Forget it, forget it. Even if something bad happens in the void, the two lords will be able to handle it. We'll just stay at the back line and take care of our home. After a very fast teleportation, they didn't even feel any movement. When the scene in front of them appeared again, they were already in the void. Min was standing right in front of them. The power of the void was surging all over his body and was surging towards a place. The surroundings were pitch black. It was so dark that it was remote and frightening. There was no world. However, there were traces left behind by a large amount of energy in the void. The worlds that existed here were probably moved away by them. That was why there were so many traces left behind. However, Yin Nuashing found that the void itself was very empty. It probably didn't give birth to many worlds in the first place. Min was still releasing energy there as if he was investigating something. Yin Nuashing looked around. At first glance, he naturally couldn't see anything clearly. At second glance, he found something. At third glance, Yin Nuashing rubbed his eyes and said, "My eyes hurt." Everyone was speechless. Seeing him blink his eyes so many times, they thought that he had seen something. In the end, he said that his eyes hurt. Yin Nuashing stuck out his tongue. He had indeed seen something, but he did not know why Min had brought him to this part of the void. He had left in a hurry and did not make any preparations, only bringing him along. Although it was not to the point where he was ready to rush through the void, he had to be prepared to destroy the world and the void at any time when he went out for a stroll, lest abyssal manifestations of the primordial realm suddenly pop out of a corner and fill up an entire primordial realm. At that time, he was still admiring the scenery, and that would be true. Now, the upper and lower limits of the abyssal death mist manifestations were unclear, and he would have to deal with as many as they came out. Boom, boom. Gurgle, gurgle. As if an underwater volcano was about to erupt, the collision of magma and seawater produced thunderous and dull sounds. Yin Nuashing clearly saw some weak energy waves suddenly spreading from the void in front of him. They spread out in 4 directions in the shape of a cross. As the speed was too fast, it was like a shooting star flashing across the sky. He only had time to see the cross and couldn't clearly see where it was coming from. On this side, Min had yet to do anything. Yin Nuashing planned to analyze this space that felt strange the moment he arrived. The little angel hurriedly pulled him back. "Little star, you have to think twice." Yin Nuashing, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? This void doesn't look very stable. If you casually mess around, it might explode." Yin Nuashing, as the most important person in the void, you need to have a certain level of professional integrity. Wait for Min to finish before you take a look. Otherwise, things might go awry again. Yin Nuashing wanted to cry. "Girl, what did I do to you? Why did she have to insist on the words important person?" Chapter 15:18. Confirmed. Lock onto the void. Lord Hui, we have discovered an abnormal flow in the void. All the power of the void and the power of the rules have disappeared in the area in front of us. Repeat the inspection. We have discovered traces of a large amount of energy surging at the edge of the black nest. It is speculated that all the phenomena in the void have been attracted by the black nest. There is no feedback from the energy input. We have lost contact with it. Continue to change the inspection method. There is no vibration of order and chaos. We can't detect any pattern or trend. If the black nest can endlessly devour all the phenomena in the void, there should be some changes in the rules and order of this void. However, there is no change in either of these. We look down at the void. His vision as a yuancher allowed him to observe the void from a higher level. He could even use the void itself to observe itself. His attention was all on the area in front of him, a void that was also dark. It was so dark that it had no friends. This void was desolate and lonely. There were no worlds gathered and no things that could be directly observed with the eyes. There was only the black nest that was like a black hole. The void energy that flowed from all directions in the void and the fragments of the rules that were floating in the void treated them as a beam of light. When they were 30 to 40,000 feet away from the black nest, they would suddenly disappear without a trace. Unlike some vortexes and holes, where the tracks of their disappearance could be seen, they would suddenly disappear without a trace before the inexplicable devouring of the black nest. This was the only information that they had obtained after spending nearly 6 hours here. Lord Hui, the nearby search and inspection is almost over. I Ching emerged from Hui's side and bowed respectfully. Then he said softly, "As you have expected, the void that is a little further away is not affected by the black nest. Its range of influence seems to only be the void where it is and the surrounding area. What about the influence of order and rules? There is also the sea of time and the like." Hui nodded and asked again. None of them were affected. The black nest would only affect the place where it nested, and it affected the entire layer of the void. The space barrier, the time barrier, and the primordial realm barrier all had a big hole in this position. Hui jumped into the sea of time and found that there was a hole in the golden ocean. The strange hole floating on the surface of the ocean was also swallowing the seawater of the sea of time, but it did not form a whirlpool. Just as they found out, it would only swallow everything that entered its swallowing range in an instant. Before that, there was no trend, and even if it was an extremely fast and gradual process, the swallowing had already ended when it happened. The target's position in the void has not shifted at all. Lord Hui, black nest will not move according to the flow of the void. It is fixed in this area. At the bottom of the void, the sea of time, and the concept of rules, we have found black nests of the same size. There is no deviation in the position of each layer. It appears on all the layers at the same time. When we investigate the position of the other layers, we did not find any special information. Our energy still has no way to go deep into the black nest. Continue to change the detection method. Listening to the bustling voices of the group, Hui frowned tightly. The black nest had appeared in the void for quite some time. So far, they had not found a second place with a black nest. It seemed to be just one of the countless strange phenomena in the void. This time, they also got rid of Maple and rolled up their sleeves to go into battle. The main reason was to let him rest. Although they were all immortals, Maple always overused his own strength and played with himself until he collapsed. Lord Hui, should we inform Lord Maple about this? I Ching did not know what Hui was thinking. The matter at hand had reached a critical point, and he subconsciously thought of another lord. No, don't inform Maple. Let him rest for a while. Hui quickly waved his hand and shook his head. That guy is too exhausted and has too many things to bear. If he does not rest well, he will one day drive himself crazy. Oh no, he has already been driven crazy by himself. Ahem, he has just taken a stroll around the base of the underworld. It is quite stressful. Let's not disturb his rest now. Besides, he should be busy now. I Ching remembered the strange, mysterious realm that the Lord of the Void Holy Court mentioned. He could not help but laugh dryly. Didn't you say that you want to let Lord Maple rest? Yes, but you don't understand. Given the current situation, how can Maple rest? We can't sit still and have to find something to do. Instead of letting him think about random things or endlessly worry about the order of the void, why don't we take the initiative to throw something at him to attract his attention and break his train of thought so that he has no time to care about other things? After all, the matter over there is still a matter in the realm of order. I don't think there will be any trouble. We probably don't even have to do anything. Just let Maple be the mascot and hold the fort. We nodded and looked at Black Nest, which was not moving at all. At least, it should be much simpler than what we have to deal with. I Ching was silent. When he thought of the two masters' strange attraction and the physique that could distort the probability of the void, he felt a little worried about Lord Feng's seemingly simple, no problem, no trouble, and very easy matter. I don't think anything will happen. I Ching mumbled worriedly. Don't worry. With Maple's ability, there won't be any. Huey's tone gradually turned from excited to calm, and then a little hesitant. Finally, there was a hint of worry. SSS, with that strange thing's characteristics, I'm afraid that. Hui slapped himself and quickly corrected himself. I don't think anything will happen, right? He tried to use soul communication to find Maple, but after trying for a long time, there was no news from him at all. Thinking of that guy's swift and decisive action and Min's even more explosive execution, we felt that they had probably already set off. Moreover, if nothing unexpected happened, they might have already arrived at their destination. They might even have been causing trouble there for a while. Then, he couldn't use soul communication to find them. Perhaps something unexpected had happened after a while. Huey's face was ashen. Did I get into trouble? Will Maple kill me when he gets back? I Ching put on a serious face and thought seriously for a while. I think as long as you don't tell Lord Maple what you're thinking and what you just said, everything will be fine. After 3 seconds, Huey's face was like the sun after the rain. He grinned. That's true. Anyway, he doesn't know what I'm thinking. Then let's not care. Let's do what we need to do first. I Ching was speechless. What happened to letting Lord Maple have a good rest? Now that Lord Maple has fallen into the pit, you're not going to care? After going back and forth for another 2 hours, Hui had collected all the information he had gathered from everyone. Finally, he threw the information fragments into the void, and they melted away as soon as they left the barrier of order. We have tried all the methods so far. We have lost all contact with the energy creations with consciousness after they went in. The Black Nest either directly destroyed everything that went in, or its shielding was too strong. Now we just need to go in alone to find out what's going on inside. It's quite risky, but theoretically speaking, the Black Nest itself shouldn't be dangerous. That's the conclusion we've come to. I Ching frowned and said helplessly. They had been searching for a long time, but they still couldn't figure out what the Black Nest was. Based on their instincts and vague senses, the Black Nest didn't pose any threat to them. However, jumping into this strange place was a considerable risk in itself. Didn't I ask you to calculate 10 minutes ago? What's the result of the divine statue? I Ching pondered for a moment. 80% of the results are safe. The remaining 20% is unknown. Unknown. Unknown is not necessarily a bad thing. We rubbed his face hard with both hands. After a while, he let out a long sigh. Everyone stay put. I'll go in and take a look myself. Don't do that. Lord Hui, please reconsider. I Ching and the others were instantly enraged. To let their Lord Guardian jump into the Black Nest without knowing the situation at all, not to mention that there was an 80% chance that everything would be fine. Even if there was a 100% chance that everything would be fine, they still wouldn't let the Lord Guardian rush in like this. If something really happened, they would probably have to face Lord Feng with their lives. Lord Hui, it's us who should go. You mustn't take the risk. I Ching quickly bowed and said, Screw you. Hui rolled his eyes and pushed I Ching. I'm still a primeval sky god. You little brats, if something really happens in there, do you think you can handle it? But no buts. I'm the one with the highest level here. I'm the strongest shield in the world of order. Hui waved his hand to quiet everyone down. He said seriously, after I go in, I'll try to get in touch with you. In 10 minutes. No, 20 minutes. If I don't get in touch with you after 20 minutes, you can go back and tell Feng about this. I Ching and the others had a complicated expression. After hesitating for a moment, they bowed respectfully. "Yes, Lord. Then I'll be right back." Hui took a deep breath and lifted his foot to take a step forward. I Ching retracted the power of the dozens of people. Energy surged in his body. He was on guard against anything that was about to happen. He stared intently at Lord Hui as he walked step by step towards the black nest. Little by little, he walked towards the edge of devouring that they had deduced. When they thought of the energy, the rule fragments, and the consciousness creations that they had hastily created vanishing instantly after crossing the edge of devouring, they panicked slightly. Huey's body exuded boundless golden light. In the void, he looked like a sun. He stood at the edge of the land and suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, "Come on, bastard! If you have the guts, hit my head." I Ching and the others. Then, he quickly took a step forward. In the next moment, he suddenly disappeared from the sight of I Ching and the others. Even though they had already expected such a thing to happen, when Sir Hui really disappeared from their sight, their hearts still thumped fiercely. In that instant, they felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, being exiled to the edge of the void and slowly dying. Observe and detect. There are no changes in the black nest. All the energy is still in a silent state. There are no changes in the rules or order. We have lost connection with Lord Huey's soul and consciousness. Even some of the consciousness imprints that Lord Hui left here have disappeared. It's as if all connections have been cut off. The soul seed is silent. Lord Huey's soul light is quickly dimming. It's not that Lord Hui is seriously injured. It's a reaction of the connection being cut off. Something is blocking the connection between Lord Hui and everything that Lord Hui left behind. That connection is weakening bit by bit. Oh no, Lord Feng will also sense it. I Ching, this is bad. Should we report to Lord Feng first, or bite the bullet and cut off the connection? They didn't expect such a situation to happen. They had imagined the world collapsing and the world being destroyed. How could they have known that something like this would happen? If Lord Feng knew that they had lost contact with Lord Hui, he wouldn't come over directly, right? I Ching, quickly. Come in, everything is normal here. Yen at yen% coming quickly. If you have something to say, wait then. Just when I Ching and the rest were as anxious as ants on a hot pan, an intermittent soul transmission sound suddenly came from their souls, causing the anxious I Ching and the rest to be overjoyed. This was Lord Huey's voice. The voice was very vague and intermittent, and it was hard to hear clearly. The other side was probably in another space or some other situation. They didn't expect that even Lord Hui would be affected by the black nest shielding. I Ching and the others looked at each other. Without much hesitation, they released their strength to the limit. The group of people shouted and charged into the black nest. In another void far away, Yin Nuoshing suddenly turned his gaze and pressed his chest in confusion. He turned his gaze and looked at Jing Yuanji. He found that she was looking at him with a frightened gaze. Just as he was about to say something, he waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, it's not an accident." Something probably forcibly cut off the connection between Hui and his scattered will and energy. If he was really injured and dying, it wouldn't be like this. Jing Yuanji breathed a sigh of relief when she heard this. It just so happened that something happened to Lord Chi Hui. Her soul trembled again. This time, it was I Ching and the 20 to 30 soul seeds and soul imprints. Her gaze instantly became strange. Yin Nuoshing was also a little surprised. Hui said that he was busy over there. I didn't expect him to bring people out. I don't know what they are doing. After thinking for a while, Yin Nuoshing stopped thinking about it. At present, Hui did not have any direct problems. It was just that the connection was forcibly cut off. It was probably blocked by something, but it was not a big problem. Even if there were many strange things in this void, there should not be many that could kill a heavenly god of the origin in the void, except for the things created by the heavenly god of origin. However, those things were now gathered in the world of origin, so there was probably nothing left out. Yin Nuoshing tried to contact Hui on the other side of the void several times, but to no avail. Then, he turned his attention back to the place in front of him. In the dark void, cross-shaped starlight flashed from time to time. This time, Yin Nuoxing saw it clearly. It was not a cross-shaped starlight, but a world barrier that flashed when it came into contact with something. However, other places were covered by something, so the flashing movement looked like a cross-shaped starlight flashing by. Although there's a world barrier, the inside is already an empty shell. Yin Nuoxing stroked his long hair and muttered to himself, I don't know what strange changes have happened to that secret realm. Not only does it occupy the space as its own and constantly expand itself, but it can also blur the boundary between the space of the present world and the void, swallowing the void into its own body. However, it can prevent the void from affecting the world that is not much left. After muttering to himself, Yin Nuoxing noticed that someone was looking at him. He thought for a moment and said, To put it simply, an inflated balloon has occupied a large and irregular space in a perfectly round space. The top of the balloon is at the end of the world barrier that we're facing now, so the world barrier's flashing light is in the shape of a cross. Then, the original space of that world is relatively compressed, squeezed into a space that is not touched by the balloon, and condensed into a ball. The inside of the balloon is all void, and it's an uncontrollable void. It's not the kind of void that exists inside the world itself. Yin Nuoxing stared at the dark space, his eyes flashing. But that's just a rough description. In fact, I can't say how much the secret realm has expanded. It might have filled up the entire interior, and the remaining space is all squeezed together. You might be able to see a few 100 million stars squeezed together. Or maybe the secret realm has already filled up the space around the world barrier, and the interior is still expanding little by little. In fact, there's still quite a lot of space left. It should be either of those two possibilities. It's hard to see the entire world's light from all directions. At least near the world barrier, there's only the void. This world has been abandoned. Yin Nuoxing looked at Min Min, nodded, and said coldly, When the secret realm lost control and began to expand, the life in this world had already begun to evacuate. Now, only an empty shell is left. After walking around outside for a few rounds, Yin Nuoxing spread his hands and said, Forget it. Let's just go in and take a look. We can't see much from the outside. What was this secret realm originally for? When we go in, we're not going into the world that has exploded. We're going straight into the secret realm. This secret realm. Min's eyebrows twitched, and his face was cold. What's it for? Yin Nuoxing said. How would I know? I'm asking you. What's in your house? Min shook his head. I'm not sure either. This place is a little remote, and I don't really care about it. Usually, it's managed by the people below. They don't pay attention to the situation here. Moreover, it's just one or two secret realms. They usually don't pay attention to it. Yin Nuoxing face-bombed. It made sense. If it was him, he probably wouldn't pay attention to it either. Observation, no abnormalities, no threats. Yin Nuoxing stared at the world barrier that was sandwiched in the void. A pure white light flashed in his eyes. See you, Qing Huang. Hide in my soul first. Come out after I go in and confirm the situation. Although he was not worried that there would be any unexpected situations that could threaten them in such a place, it was still an unknown space. They had to be more vigilant. Chapter 15:19. There was no feeling of teleportation when they rushed into another space. They did not even experience the change of energy state when they rushed into the world barrier. It was as if they had directly rushed into a space without any barriers. The order barrier that had been prepared earlier subconsciously opened up. The barrier came into contact with the suddenly changed void, and there was a faint ripple on the barrier. There was a glimmer of energy on the barrier, and it disappeared little by little. It's done. Yin Nuoxing looked at the ripple of energy that had completely calmed down not long after and was a little surprised. They had passed through a layer of the world barrier in one breath, a layer of a space-like barrier that belonged to the arcane realm, and even crashed into the void inside the arcane realm. In the end, there was only a little repulsive reaction. It was about the same as entering the enemy's city gate without going through more than 3 rounds of checks in a state of war. It was a little perfunctory. However, there was always something strange going on. In addition, Yin Nuashing was in the state of being the most important thing in the void. This strange situation was probably going to cause some trouble. They might have just entered the city and strolled leisurely for a few steps before they were surrounded by burly men armed to the teeth from all directions. Jing Yuanji, Min, and the others looked around vigilantly. Yin Nuashing raised his hand and used his energy to exchange with the energy in this arcane realm. He took a bite and used his own energy to check the situation in this space. We have indeed passed through 2 layers of space consecutively. We should be in this arcane realm, but Jing Yuanji looked around. This place is exactly the same as the void. I can't see the difference. Could it be that this arcane realm has been cleansed by the void? That was the case for now. The void was empty, and there was nothing in it. They could not see the world barrier behind them, which proved that they had entered another layer of space inside the world. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and tried to let the energy flow deeper into the space. At the same time, he also expanded the range of the order barrier. It expanded from 2 to 3 feet in size to the size of star in an instant, and it was still expanding rapidly. About 5 minutes later, Yin Nuashing retracted all the energy and barriers and shook his head at Min. There's nothing here. At present, this space is still quite irregular. Although the void has completely immersed this space, it's relatively not uniform. Some places have a higher concentration of the void, and the places near the middle have a lower concentration. When the void violently surges into a world, a space, and the entire process does not exceed 2 hours of the last traces of the space being annihilated by the void, its barrier is also strong enough to withstand the erosion of the void. That's why such a situation occurs. 2 hours? Min's stiff expression was slightly shaken. He said in a cold voice, "This world has been abandoned for tens of millions of years. It was only because the war was urgent that no one cared about it. With such a density of void, even the Empyrean god of origin would not be able to withstand continuous erosion for tens of millions of years." Yin Nuashing nodded. This was indeed a problem. If it was a normal void, the Empyrean god of origin's creation should be able to float in the void for a long time, without being destroyed unless it encountered a great reincarnation. However, the void in this out-of-control arcane realm, the void was an ocean, and this place was a giant waterfall with a vertical drop of tens of millions of miles. The entire out-of-control arcane realm had been eroded back and forth by this level of void, and it had not yet calmed down. Under this level of erosion, even the things he created would not be able to withstand for tens of millions of years without any special protection against the void. Since there is a contradiction, aside from the void itself, the only factor is this out-of-control arcane realm. As for the primeval god of origin, there is no presence of that realm here. Yin Nuashing looked around for a while, and then waved his hand and walked forward. Let's go take a look at other places. Dao Heaven's root muttered in confusion. Didn't you say there was nothing? Yin Nuashing looked at Min, and the last sentence was directed at her. It's hard to guarantee that nothing will happen. After all, this is a space that we have never been to before, and now that we have discovered the contradiction in time, there should be some secrets that we have not discovered. By the way, what was the process of this arcane realm going out of control? That arcane realm was an unstable arcane realm long before it went out of control. Some said that the bottom level of this arcane realm was connected to the depths of the void, and some said that the arcane realm itself was extremely unstable when it was constructed and would fall into the void sooner or later. Before it went out of control this time, it had already gone out of control once. That time, it had expanded by 30,000 times, and the barrier between the arcane realm and the real world was broken through. It was directly projected into the real world and occupied an entire planet. After that, it probably used some means to stabilize and seal it. I only noticed it after the great collapse millions of years ago, but at that time, the void was fighting and I did not have the time to care about it. Do you have the exact time? It was 110,000 years away from 90 million years ago. Yin Nuashing could not help but ponder after hearing that. He was thinking about the problem of the void. The time difference and span in the void could be so huge that it would make one's hair stand on end. Using extreme time to calculate the situation 95 million years ago, that meant that the collapse of the arcane realm might have something to do with the void 95 million years ago, or 90 million years ago. It could also be that the realm suddenly collapsed on its own. Bang! Yin Nuashing, who was thinking about the void, suddenly heard this thunderous sound. He was so shocked that his heart almost jumped out his chest. He quickly swept the netherworld ruined sword in all directions, but he didn't find anything strange. He couldn't help but be slightly stunned. What? What's going on? Everyone was stunned when they saw Dao Heaven's expression as if she was ready to destroy the world in the next second. They then turned to look in the direction of the sound and saw Dao Heaven's red eyes. She was so depressed that she could not speak. When she saw that everyone had turned around, she said in a wrong tone, "I hit something." Yin Nuashing went over and groped around in the void in front of her. Not long after reaching out, he touched a wall. He used a bit of energy to light up the entire wall, and the light spread to a very far place. Everyone watched as the light from the wall rapidly moved in a certain direction. The range of the light grew larger and larger, and it was like a giant wall standing in the starry sky. On the other hand, the place that Dao Tian had bumped into just happened to be at the edge of the wall. This was like hitting the jackpot. The group of people had moved forward together, and she was the only one who had deviated by less than 2 meters. Then, she had bumped into the wall. It's the space of this secret realm that has been compressed by the void until it's only left with this thin piece. Look. Yin Nuashing walked to the side and put her hands together to hold the thin piece of space between her hands. It was so thin that it was only as thick as a piece of paper. However, it was actually a normal space. If it was a star field, there would be a sun, a moon, and countless stars shining brightly. If there were life inside, unless they entered the world as well, they would only be as thin as a piece of paper. What will happen to the life that lives in this space? Dao Heaven rubbed her red nose and forehead. She could not help but ask with a slightly nasal voice. Well, there won't be any changes. It's just that the space has been compressed and the laws have changed slightly. Life that cannot sense the laws in space will not know what has happened to their own world. If they come out of that space, they will return to their original state. What changed is the laws of the space, and it has nothing to do with those people or things themselves. You can treat it as another world with special laws, and it won't be much different. In any case, when they come into contact with the laws of the void outside, they will return to normal. If they cannot return to normal, they will be suppressed by the laws of the void until they can return to normal. Yin Nuashing reached out and knocked on this paper wall. As he rubbed his palm and fingers, energy surged and flowed into it. The dim light of energy extended along the wall that his palm touched, and his eyes flashed with pure white light. This space is already dead. When the void violently poured in, it washed away space, time, and laws, but for some reason, it left a shell here. Jing Yuanji reached out and pointed at the wall. This is the shell of the space. Yin Nuashing nodded and continued. But even if it's an empty shell, it is still a complete space. Yuanji, take a look. Jing Yuanji nodded. Not long after her godly power surged into the wall, she was slightly stunned. Her eyes became a little surprised. Lord Feng, this is a point of entanglement of laws. There are a lot of law fragments stored in it. According to the time, it is very likely that it is the excessive law fragments produced when the arcane realm collapsed. Perhaps there won't be any useful information left behind. For a point of law entanglement of this scale and a void cleansing of this degree, this point has already used up all of its power just to maintain its existence. It can't possibly preserve anything else. Yin Nuashing raised his chin. Find the point where the blankness of the law is the most serious and bring us there. That should be the place where the arcane realm collapsed first. Perhaps we can find a reason for the collapse of the arcane realm and remove its entanglement from that place. Then we can stop its expansion instantly. It did not take long for Jing Yuanji to find the initial position where the point of entanglement began to form. She brought Yin Nuoxing and the rest along the space and quickly moved forward. The unlucky space that was compressed into a layer of paper by the void was also pitch black. If it were not for Jing Yuanji's light blue light leading the way, no one would have thought that this paper was a space. At first glance, it looked like some kind of unknown starry sky and void structure. We're here. It's here. Jing Yuanji slowly brought everyone to a stop. The light blue energy left in that space turned into light and flew into the distance, following a certain trajectory and converging in front of them. It depicted the edge and the interior of something hidden in the darkness. It was a black hole with dozens of light blue energy particles tangled in a mess in the middle. Time, space law, and void are entangled in this point. The edge of the circle separates order and chaos, and the inside is a space without any order. I don't know what caused this state of chaos, but the collapse began here. There is no mistake about it. Jing Yuanji whispered in Yin Nuoxing's ear. Dao Tian looked at the big black hole, and his pretty face twitched. Why is a hole again? Big brother, why are you always drilling holes? Before Yin Nuoxing could say anything, he coughed violently and rolled his eyes. What do you mean I always drill holes? There is nothing else in this void. It's not that it looks like a black hole. It's because it doesn't show anything. The void itself is like this. There are some fragments or energy outlining the edge, so it looks like a hole. Dao Tian bared his teeth at him. The little angel suddenly thought of something and whispered in his soul, "You have to take it easy. You must be careful." Yin Nuoxing, who was still thinking about how to deal with this, almost choked when he heard this. Then he threw a ball of energy directly at Dao Tian. Everyone, the girls, stared blankly as the ball of energy, which was the size of a planet, rushed into the thin space with enough energy to destroy the void. The two objects, which were completely disproportionate in size, collided with each other. The dark red ball of energy blocked the black hole and was quickly devoured by it. At the same time, something seemed to be happening in this lonely void. It's over. Yin Nuoxing's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Beside him, Qingyu blinked and smiled at him unhurriedly. Feng Lingjun, what were you thinking about just now? How would I know what I was thinking? How would I know what was wrong with my brain? Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly and then gritted his teeth at the little angel in his soul. You did it on purpose. You did it on purpose. The little angel stuck out her tongue and pretended to talk to Siyu and Feng Qing Wang as if it had nothing to do with her. Jing Yuanji suddenly turned around and gazed into the distance. In her eyes, there was a little bit of azure light flickering in the void. Lord Feng, a layer of chaotic energy has appeared in the void at the edge of this space. It looks like a wall. Yin Nuoxing, Min, and the others, who had just restrained the troublesome energy and were racking their brains to think of a way to remedy the situation, turned their heads. Under Jing Yuanji's instructions, they looked at the depths of the void and were surprised to find that there was suddenly a large amount of blue surging air waves at the place where they had just entered. It looked like a sandstorm, and there were constantly black holes in the sandstorm that appeared and quickly disappeared. It was like the shape of lightning condensed by the power of the void, but it was thousands of miles wide. They thought that the power of the void would devour each other with that layer of inexplicable energy sandstorm. But the reality was that when the lightning of the void power bloomed, it would release a huge amount of blue energy, like a surging sea of clouds constantly rolling out clouds from the depths. It's the power of the void mixed with a large number of law fragments. Yin Nuoxing narrowed his eyes. It's the same as the energy in that space. Jing Yuanji narrowed her eyes slightly. She tried to use the power of godly right to control the turbulent spatial storm in the void, but the power of space she was adept at failed, and she couldn't control the storm. Yin Nuashing had just moved the energy ball away from the black hole when he suddenly found a weak suction force forming in the hole. As he had accidentally touched the core of the huge entanglement point, he did not dare to let the suction force continue to expand. He waved his hand and used the energy ball to block the hole. Then, the suction force suddenly disappeared, which made him a little curious. Jing Yuanji looked at Lord Feng, moving the energy ball around like he was convulsing. His expression changed with the convulsion. She was at a loss and was stunned. Lord Feng, what are you doing? Ahem. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly and pointed at the black hole. I'm looking at the movement of that thing, and I've noticed something. If we block it, the storm that forms at the edge will slow down, but if we let it go, it will speed up. Dao Heaven thought for a moment. So if we block that hole, we will die a little later? Everyone was speechless. Let's not talk about what will happen if we block and let go of the hole. Yin Nuashing hit Dao Heaven's head with his sword and looked at the troublemaker. He sighed. It's wishful thinking to think that a storm of this level can kill us. This is like some undiscovered mechanism formed by the combination of the void and the secret realm. Forget it. I can't think of a way to fix it. Let it suck until it's full. Yin Nuashing sighed and waved his hand to move the energy ball that was blocking the hole. Then, he threw 2 balls of concentrated void energy at the madly forming storm at the edge. The effect was immediate. The sandstorm expanded by tens of thousands of times in an instant and came towards them from the edge with a destructive force. We seem to be here to fix it. Min couldn't help but remind them. It's okay. I have a backup plan outside. If something happens, this place will be thrown into the void. Now, let's take a look at the mess in this space. Don't think that this is a little messy. Maybe something good will happen. Little angel, and see you huddled together. See you whispered, he seems to be messing around like this all the time. All the time. Little angel nodded affirmatively. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and held up the barrier. He watched as the sandstorm came at them with a force that could destroy cities. It crushed through the space, and the massive energy rolled over the energy barrier with a loud boom. The barrier and the mutated dimensional force, the fragments of the natural order, and the void energy clashed with each other. Layers of ripples appeared on the barrier. The dark red barrier exploded with destructive energy and pushed the energy away. Yin Nuashing left hundreds of thousands of energy marks in the barrier. She watched as the marks rushed into the black hole and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom! Following the earth-shattering commotion, the suction force from the black hole increased exponentially. Everyone felt that the sandstorm and the void were about to be sucked in together. Even they couldn't withstand the suction force and fell into the black hole together with the barrier. Don't resist. Don't get lost in this abnormal space storm. Let's take a look first. Yin Nuashing's calm voice sounded in the minds of Min, Jing Yuanji, and the others. They nodded and tied themselves to the order barrier. Then, they followed the torrent of the storm and crashed into the hole in front of them. Jing Yuanji inadvertently turned her head and saw a rare sight in her life. Everything in the world, including the void, space, and time, seemed to have connected into a line of light. It rushed towards them from the distant void. It was like watching an endless river converging into a water column and rushing towards them. Chapter 15:20. In the starry sky, energies with millions of different auras were flying all over the world, striking across the galaxy and shattering the starry sky. The space of the starry sky was abnormally tough. Countless destructive energies that could not withstand the starry sky were flying around, but there was not a single crack in the space. It was abnormally tough. Superior beings from who knows how many worlds converged here. Looking at those who fought like wolves and tigers without regard for their lives. Looking at the starry sky that harvested countless superior beings like a meat grinder, Ge Zhongming suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion and emptiness from the bottom of his heart. His collapsed body in the starry sky struggled to move a few times, and his eyes swept across a spot in the starry sky. A broken planet, an unlucky planet that was torn into pieces by countless scorching energies. Its northern hemisphere was cut into tens of thousands of pieces, and its southern hemisphere was sunken into a crater the size of the planet itself. The azure core was exposed in the starry sky, and the faint blue light was like a piece of amber, with a hint of evil and breathtaking. These powerful beings who came from countless worlds and called themselves gods, with a long list of titles engraved on their names. Whether they were saints whose names would go down in history in their own worlds, or wanted criminals in 10,000 worlds, were not of much value in this void and this starry sky. None of that mattered. They were just mad dogs here, fighting until their heads bled for that tempting blue thing, losing all their elegance. Heaven knows why he would think of such things at this time. Now, everyone in the starry sky was dying. Those who laid the trap, those who fished behind the scenes, and those who did all those things had all appeared. How many of these millions of people, tens of millions of people, in the end, was unknown. Those who thought of themselves as the masters behind the scenes were each using their own means. Now, if they could not get out, others would not be able to either. They would either be trapped here and fight until they were all wiped out, or several parties would come to a consensus to stop fighting. Other than that, he really could not think of how this battle would end. Zhongming, hold on a little longer. A skinny young man with shoulder-length hair rushed in front of him. He tore off his tattered shirt and tied it around his heart. The piece of cloth with strong defensive and healing power blocked the bull-sized wound. The young man wiped the sweat and blood on his face and helped him up. Let's go first. Gu Zhongming's dim eyes swept across the chaotic and boundless battlefield. The starry sky lost its color. The void was deathly still, and the flickering sparks ignited the never-ending conflict in this world. They didn't know why they were fighting. They didn't know why they were fighting. They were just two insignificant characters in this war, and those protagonists behind the scenes were still fighting with all their might in front of the blue core. He roughly knew why he was thinking about such messy things. It was probably because he was about to die, and his thoughts were in a mess. Ning Fei, retreat. No chance. When the skinny young man heard the faint gasps, his eyes trembled slightly. He could not help but ask, "You don't want the Star Spirit Spring anymore?" Gu Zhongming's mouth opened and closed, but he could not even make a complete sound. His dry voice was like 1,000-years-old withered tree, and a gentle breath would turn it into dust and dissipate. Just you wait. I'll bring you the Star Spirit Spring in a bit. Just as Ning Fei finished speaking, he sensed an enormous energy that was enough to threaten the two of them charging towards them from the front. The sudden scene caused him to quickly shut his mouth. This was not a stray arrow on the battlefield, but a direct attack. Ning Fei was about to bring Gu Zhongming to dodge the attack, but suddenly, an even more powerful energy reaction came from above and was about to arrive in front of them in an instant. Pong! The blue torrent of energy that fell from the front blocked the dangerous energy attack. The torrent of energy that was thousands of miles wide flowed with the scene of a galaxy, as if it was the crystallization of a star field, and did not dissipate for a long time. This sudden change also made the people who were attacking them stop temporarily. In the distance, there were even more auras that were similar to this torrent of energy. Ning Fei turned his head stiffly and saw that the chaotic starry sky was stopped by tens of thousands of similar blue energy torrents. The battlefield was forcibly separated, and everyone panicked because of the sudden change. For a moment, they were stunned in place. Those who were fast enough to dodge were still stunned, and those who were slow or unlucky had already been swallowed by the energy torrent and turned into ashes. Looking at the huge energy that suddenly descended in the starry sky, countless eyes turned to the source, the blue core of the shattered planet, the Star Spirit Spring. This was the change that everyone saw with their own eyes. The blue core was like a huge fountain, spewing out countless violent energy torrents. The energy light that contained powerful law fragments and void energy caused the stability of the starry sky to rapidly decline. The space that was so stable that it could not be torn open just a moment ago. Now, with the energy torrent as the center, countless pitch-black cracks bloomed like a spider's web. Even the starry sky was trembling slightly, and with the sudden burst of energy light, it trembled from time to time. Ningfei looked at the star spirit spring that spewed out huge amounts of energy and felt his mouth go dry. The energy that burst out was enough to make the starry sky explode. If it was not for the fact that it tore open space itself and poured a lot of energy into the void, the starry sky might have already been torn apart. It really is a spring, Gu Zhoming said dryly. He thought that the name had some other meaning, but he did not expect it to really be a spring. After the initial panic subsided, countless people's eyes glowed with a green light. Those who were still standing after a huge battle were either those who had been hiding or those who had been watching the show from the sidelines. At this moment, the sudden change disrupted the arrangements and plans of countless people. Taking advantage of this chaos, many people rushed toward the star spirit spring, obviously intending to fish in troubled waters. You scoundrels also want to take advantage of the situation. Just as countless people were surging toward the star spirit spring, a cold shout suddenly rang out across the starry sky. Immediately after, the heavenly gods of origin who had been happily fighting in the chaotic battle suddenly gathered around the star spirit spring. Stop right there. Those who move without permission will die. The expressions of the people who had been rushing to cause trouble changed drastically. The people behind the scenes suddenly joined forces to clear the area. The pressure brought about by this was not ordinary. Even though there were many people among them who were comparable to the strongest experts of these few families, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. It was too difficult for them to deal with these few families alone. A group of scattered people could not temporarily join forces to deal with the enemy, so they could only watch helplessly. After intimidating all the experts in the starry sky, this part of the starry sky was divided by the energy of the star spirit spring. At this moment, it was completely silent. Before those few families could do anything, several violent energy explosions suddenly rang out in the starry sky. Originally, this level of energy explosion would not cause too much of a commotion, but the starry sky was too quiet at this moment. Even the slightest movement would attract the attention of countless people. There were actually people who were putting on a good show at this critical moment. Ningfei carried Gu Zhoming on his shoulder and ran for his life. Behind him, there were a few people who looked like they did not care about their lives and were chasing after them with all their might. Moreover, they were deliberately driving them toward the blockade of the few great forces. Ningfei saw at a glance that they were planning to exchange their lives for his and kill with a borrowed knife. However, he had no other choice. He could only grit his teeth and rush toward the blockade, as if he wanted to rush directly to the star spirit spring. Several experts who were blocking their escape path were about to intercept and kill them when a man who had been fighting for so long suddenly thought of something and smiled evilly. It's fine. Let them pass. Just treat it as a scout for us. Although it's good, we still need someone to try it out in advance. If they could think of this, the other families could naturally understand as well. Immediately, all of them withdrew their powers, causing the other onlookers to be somewhat confused. However, after a short while, they all understood what was going on. All of them cast mocking gazes at the two fellows who were being chased. Seeing that the people in front of them did not stop them, and even had the intention to let them pass, Ningfei and Gu Zhoming were stunned. Their eyes met, and they instantly understood the relationship between them. They glanced at the few mad dogs behind them and fiercely gritted their teeth. There was no other choice at the moment, so why not take a gamble? Kid, the energy in the middle and lower side of the star spirit spring is slightly weaker. An evil voice suddenly sounded in his soul, causing Ningfei to clench his teeth. He had no choice but to change his direction slightly, leading the people behind him to charge towards the area with the so-called weak energy. There was a hint of anticipation in the countless mocking gazes. Boom! Before the two of them had completely rushed into the star spirit spring, a light beam of energy that was enough to light up the entire starry sky suddenly erupted from the star spirit, spring in front of them. The light beam was so dazzling that it was enough to blind the eyes, causing Ning Fei to tightly close his eyes. The huge shock wave of energy swept over from the front, causing his body to be unable to move. Just as he was about to lose all hope, his eyes suddenly widened. From the star spirit spring, he saw some shadows. Everyone in the starry sky looked at the star spirit spring that had suddenly erupted with a dazzling light, completely forgetting about the two groups of people who were chasing and fleeing. That incomparably brilliant light seemed to contain the truth of this world, causing them to be unable to shift their gazes away. It was so dazzling, so beautiful, something was emerging from the star spirit spring. All right, let's guess what the situation is this time. Is it a sealed world? Is it the collapsed space of the secret realm? Or is it a place that has broken away from order and rules? Lord Foam, I guess it has something to do with space. The movement created by the whole just now is all the power of space. It could be a buried space. You forgot that there is also the power of the void inside. A sealed world. Lord Feng Ling, I can't guess. Why don't you tell me what you think? Did you think I told you about the 3 options? Actually, I'm saying that this is a sealed world that has broken away from order and law and collapsed. Cough, cough. All right, I'm just joking. Don't look at me like that. We'll know once we get out. The 2 energy beams slowly disappeared, and the brightness of the starry sky gradually decreased. Suddenly, 4 figures walked out from the star spirit spring, accompanied by a few understated conversations. Everyone in the starry sky heard them. However, compared to the content of the conversation, they were more interested in the figures themselves. God knows why they walked out of the star spirit spring. Yin Nuoxing led her people out of the light screen and was stunned for a moment. Millions of people in the starry sky were staring at them with their mouths agape. They looked as if they were scared silly. Yin Nuoxing could not help but mutter to Jing Yuanji and the others in her soul. Don't tell me we tore down someone's wall. I didn't do anything. The starry sky moved on its own. It has nothing to do with me. You know that. I'm just afraid that they won't listen to you. Min glanced at the starry sky and responded faintly. The void energy in his body flowed slightly. Looking at this situation, they had either mistakenly entered a strange place or mistakenly entered a deadly place, such as someone's forbidden place or a starry sky where a battle was going on. She felt that it should be the former. After all, it was too neat and quiet. Everyone was looking at them from a distance with vigilance. There was no atmosphere of fighting. Or they just stopped. She felt that their appearance might be quite loud. How could it not be loud when they appeared with the energy of the entire starry sky? Yin Nuoxing looked at the 2 people who were stunned less than 100 meters in front of her. She blinked and said, "Hey you, that's right. Don't look elsewhere. Where's this place?" Ning Fei pointed at the 2 of them in a daze. He looked at the starry sky with sweat on his forehead. His mouth trembled twice before he said, "This. How do I know where this is? This is a remote starry sky. Not many people have come here, and it has not been named. Who are you? Why did you come out from there?" The elegant man's expression changed slightly. He slowly walked forward and looked down at Yin Nuoxing and the others. He said coldly, "The thing in the spring of star spirit is in your hands? Who are you people?" "Ha! Even if you ask me who I am." Yin Nuoxing scratched her head and spread her hands like a hoodlum. "How do I know who I am to you? Maybe you have never heard of that thing. So it's just a few nameless fleas." The man nodded in realization. He adjusted his crown and waved his hand casually. "Go. Take them down. Cripple them first, then take the thing from their hands." Hearing this guy's words suddenly carry a killing intent, Yin Nuoxing was also stunned for a moment. He turned his head to look at Jing Yuanji and the others in a daze. Did we barge into someone else's forbidden area? I don't know. The maidservants also shook their heads in confusion. They had just arrived, so they didn't know what was going on. However, they could tell that the other side was preparing for a fight. They calmly prepared themselves for battle and took a deep breath. "Nameless flea little star," the little angel said with a smile. Suddenly, she wrinkled her nose. Speaking of which, Little Star always gets involved in other people's affairs. Is this an instinct of being forced to do something? See, nodded. Yes, because it's the biggest in the void. See, don't listen to her. You, I don't know how you got in there. If you want to live, hurry up and throw that thing to them. Then, take advantage of the chaos and run. They're here for the thing inside. If you throw it out, they won't have time to care about you. Hiss, I'll run first. You guys take care of yourselves. The young man who had just spoken blabbered a long string of words in his mind. Then, he gritted his teeth and hurriedly slipped away. The few people behind him chased him all over the starry sky. Although I don't know what you want to do. Yin Nuashing looked at the group of people who were closing in with ill intentions. She raised her eyebrows and waved expressionlessly. Come. By the way, if you're in the same group, please come at me together. If you're not in the same group, please step back slowly. I won't be responsible for any accidental injuries. Please note that this is not a joke. If you don't like what you hear, please judge for yourself. The second half of her sentence was directed at the people in the starry sky. However, many people sneered when they heard it. Some people even laughed wantonly and pointed at them while discussing. Some people were disdainful of being lumped together and turned to leave. There were also some who instinctively felt that something was wrong and silently retreated. Her divine soul in the void observed the situation in the starry sky. Dark red energy left a mark on the retreating people and the two youths who were being chased up and down. As soon as she did that, several Empyrean gods of origin charged at them. Their energy and divine rights were released to the maximum. They charged at them like a violent star. The vast energy created an illusory energy phenomenon in the starry sky. Peak 8th heavenly layer. How dare you hold my face and bark? Yin Nuashing murmured softly. Her right hand pulled out the nether void sword and rubbed it against her left hand. Then, she viciously stabbed it into the starry sky. A ring of dark, red energy suddenly surged out from her body. Void, boundless chaos. The earth-shattering dark, red energy that could tear apart the void erupted in an instant. It contained endless destructive and chaotic energy that swept to the ends of the starry sky. The expressions of countless people in the starry sky changed drastically. In that instant, they only had time to unleash their instinctive defenses. At the same time, countless dark red energy barriers appeared on the bodies of those who were shocked and confused. Then, the wild and chaotic energy storm swept past them in the blink of an eye. Wah. Ning Fei Gong felt a burst of energy that could overturn the void behind him. He quickly turned his head and saw a dark red color fill his eyes. In the next second, he was sent flying with Guzhongming. As the world spun around him, he seemed to catch a glimpse of dark red energy stars that filled the starry sky, as well as countless energy phenomena that bloomed in an instant. The chaos lasted for about 10 seconds. Ning Fei Gong was dazed for a minute before he came back to his senses. He propped himself up on the back of the unconscious Guzhongming and looked at the starry sky. Then, he widened his eyes in horror. Less than a third of the powerful people who had filled the starry sky were now left. The people from the major factions who claimed to be the overlords of the void were all gone. Oh no, there were still 2 families who survived. Those who were still standing seemed to be those who had retreated after hearing the woman's words. Ahem, it's much quieter now. Then, allow me to ask a question. Where is this? Who are you? What are you doing? The people who had just recovered and cautiously took a step back heard Yin Nuashing's question. They almost staggered and fell to the ground in the starry sky. They looked like they were about to collapse. If it were not for this person's ridiculous strength, they would have shouted at her face. What are you doing here? You don't want to say it? At least I let you escape unscathed. Are you so unwilling to cooperate? Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and breathed a long sigh of relief. Everyone who was mentioned shuddered. To be honest, if it were not for the layer of energy barrier around them, they would have been holding hands and lining up to report to the underworld. The people from the 2 major factions who survived looked at each other and secretly made a peace treaty. Just as they were about to cooperate, Yin Nuashing waved at Ning Fei again. You, the young man who was chased halfway across the starry sky. Yes, it's you. Come here, I want to ask you something. Ningfei did not know whether to laugh or cry. His face immediately showed a "why me again" expression. Yin Nuoxing stuck out her tongue in her heart. Isn't it because you're too close? It's convenient. Chapter 1521. Several energy springs that contained tremendous energy had appeared in this region of the void. Their appearance was equivalent to whipping the void landscape, forcing rapid changes. Apart from the first energy spring, the other springs that appeared were fought over by innumerable people, stirring up stormy waves in the void. It did not stop even after the ownership of the spring was confirmed, with endless waves and ripples still forming behind it. The spring of star spirit had given birth to several behemoths. They were the hegemons of the void that now stood towering over the void, dividing and occupying a vast region of the void. For those beings who stood at the top of the pyramid, a single spring of star spirit was not very useful to them. Its significance lay more in the fact that it could steadily provide massive amounts of energy, using it to create a domain filled with energy and then earn money, land, and people. That was what it meant. Things that could rapidly gather power belonging to one's faction in the chaotic void were priceless. So, when the spring of the star spirit appeared again, all of you gathered here and fought until your brains were spilled. The people from Yin Nuo planet were enlightened. This kind of thing was very attractive to many forces, especially those who had just been established and were rapidly growing. However, to those old forces who had already grown to a stable stage, this thing was not very attractive. It was far less exciting than walking up a small step by themselves. In essence, it was an inexhaustible source of energy, mixed with a large amount of law fragments, void energy, and all kinds of origin energy. As for the few names that the young man mentioned, Min did not feel anything at all. Never heard of them. We might have come to another undiscovered region of the void. Yin Nuoxing fiddled with her bangs. According to the energy and rule, this should be a region of the upper realm. Although the void, be it the void of order or the void of chaos, is endless and could excavate by switching rule and plane, a region with so many high-level beings should logically be slowly approaching our void region with similarly massive high-level beings. I haven't heard of these things because I don't pay attention to outside matters, but Min hasn't either. He looked at Min, who shook her head firmly at him, indicating that she had no idea what faction or spring of the star spirit was. Then, this matter was a little strange. Since we started the war against the abyssal death shroud and the underworld, 70% of the void events that happened in the realm of order were obtained by us. Min replied, implying that she had heard of such large-scale battles in the realm of order. After all, there was no civil war of such scale in the realm of order in their void region, and 70 to 80% of order forces were gathered at the front line of the void to fight against the abyssal death shroud. Close. How do we get close? The kind where the two upper and middle realms are constantly getting closer to each other? Qing Yu pulled Yin Nuoxing's sleeve and asked softly. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and was about to give a simple explanation. She thought for a moment and pushed her nose with 2 fingers. Let's talk about it in detail so that we don't get mixed up again. Yu, who was in the soul, stretched her body and sat up straight. She shouted to the side energetically. Qing Wang, Little Star's class has started. Oh, I'm coming. Wait a minute. Feng Qing Wang picked up a leaf and put it between the pages of her book. She walked to the spring in the courtyard, which was just built not long ago, and washed her face. Then, she walked to the table and sat down. She took a sip of tea from the teacup handed to her by her little angel. Well, it's ready. Yuan Kong nodded and waved her hand. Big idiot, you can start now. Yin Nuoxing. Ignoring the mischievous behavior of the girls in the soul, Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly. Long story short, the void that we usually perceive is not that simple to describe with words. The division of the void, the analysis of the void, every god has their own vision and thoughts. When these factors are mixed together, even though we see the same void, we can see many different results. You don't have to explain those things. The division of a void is mostly based on the imprints of the rules. Under the same environment of rules, the aura and strength of the rules in that area are exactly the same. There are many void regions with the same rules all over the void. However, their imprints of the rules are not exactly the same. This imprint can be found at the bottom of the sea of rules. It is used to identify the general location of the void region. It is a vague location, and there is no way to determine the exact location. I can often tell whether this is the upper, middle, lower realm, or the edge of the void region because of the imprints of the rules. However, it takes a lot of effort just to remember the patterns of the imprints of the rules. If you want to know, I have brought 2 tons of notes for you to refer to. Not interested? That's fine. Everyone has their own way of judging anyway. The existence of the concept of the rules itself divides the void into areas, just like the hidden dimension or the void layer. It instinctively separates the worlds. Under normal circumstances, we may not be able to see those worlds. We have to adjust our own rules or move around in the void layer to find the corresponding rules or layer. Naturally, we can find those worlds in the hidden dimension, just like looking for the key to open the door. But eventually, they will slowly approach each other. What Shinyu just said about the proximity between the middle and upper planes is a normal phenomenon of worlds drifting in the void due to various factors. What I'm about to talk about, however, is something else. The profound rules and causality that higher beings carry with them, along with many other factors that influence them. Apart from affecting themselves, those things would also affect the world they are born in. In a world where they stay for a long time, the birth of a higher being would change certain information at the bottom of the concept layer. Worlds with many higher beings would have their rules and concepts imperceptibly raised by several levels. It's equivalent to taking a few steps up the world ladder, standing higher and making their own existence more conspicuous. On the other hand, being conspicuous on the same ladder, even if the void is endless and they are very far apart, they would slowly cross the gap between rules and concepts and approach each other. It may take a long time, but that day would eventually come. Even if those higher beings forcibly move their world around, it would only prolong the time, unless they forcibly hold the world's light in the void like an anchor. In that case, my words have nothing to do with it, but most would not do such a thing since it's meaningless. For example, it's like looking for someone in a building. Drifting in the upper, middle, and lower planes would be looking for someone on the same floor, while crossing the barrier in isolation would be looking for someone on the upper and lower floors. And since the surface layer of the void is where most of the worlds are gathered, it could almost be said that the worlds hidden in the corners and isolated in other layers of the void would eventually float on the surface layer of the void and gather. Yin Washing paused for a moment to let the girls think about it before speaking again. What I'm trying to say is that if 2 worlds of similar power really exist in the void, they would definitely meet no matter how far apart they are. In fact, such a situation would also happen between 2 higher beings who would wander aimlessly in the void and might even run into someone else's home. Jing Yunji's attention was pulled away from the soul transmission to the stars, and she glanced at the 2 young men who were obediently sitting nearby to heal their wounds, and then at the people who were trying to think of a way to break through the seal and leave this place. According to them, this void region also has very powerful forces that are on par with our own, but I have not heard of any existence like the Saint Spirit realm or the Changyuan realm for the time being. Min tilted his head and looked at Yin Nuashing. But we have never heard of these people and their worlds. Yin Nuashing nodded his head. The sudden appearance of this void territory and the many powerful life forms belonging to order that came along with it made him a little stunned. It really did appear out of thin air. According to the information that Ning Fei and Ge Zhoming had just given him, if he were to bring this void territory back, the strength of the order world would increase by about 50%. At this moment, every bit of strength counted. Feng Qing Wang suddenly said, "Could it be that the concept and the isolation barrier is too thick, so we have never heard of this place before? After all, the void is vast and boundless. If we are unlucky, some worlds might not be able to find the existence of another world. There is indeed such a possibility. However, it is said that some of the famous higher beings that exist in this region have never heard of a single one of them, even though we have 70% to 80% of the information about the Order world. They don't even know what happened in our void region. This is a little strange. Yin Nuoxing's expression became a little strange as he spoke. This was not considered isolation. It was more like they did not interact with each other, even before they met. The world could be slow and lazy, but those higher beings could not possibly stay at home all day long and be unwilling to leave the void region, right? Just as the few of them were looking at each other and trying to come up with an explanation for this strange region, the skinny young man suddenly let out a long sigh of relief, which attracted their attention. Have you rested enough? Ning Fei had just stood up and stretched his body when he heard a voice behind him. Following the sound of footsteps, he turned around and saw Yin Nuoxing and the others slowly walking towards him. The expression on their faces showed that they had something on their minds. Ning Fei saluted them and said, "I am Ning Fei. This is my friend, Ge Zhoming. Thank you for your help. It was just convenient. Don't worry about it." Yin Nuoxing shook his head. He looked at the people who were carefully observing the area and preparing to leave. He suddenly said to Ning Fei, "Let me ask you something. Have you heard of the Saint Spirit Realm?" Ning Fei frowned slightly. He lowered his head and pinched his chin as he thought for a long time. Then he shook his head. Yin Nuoxing continued to ask, "What about the Changyuan realm?" Ning Fei thought again and shook his head. Yin Nuoxing asked again, "Realm of the Gods? Abyss Death Mist? Void Temple?" The results were not unexpected. After a few more questions, Ning Fei was even more confused than they were. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others and thought for a while. Then he said softly, "In this void, I have never heard of a continent with the name realm. As for non-order energy in the form of mist, I'm sorry. I have never seen it. As for the void temple, I have never heard of it either. However, there is a temple. They even sent people here, but they have already been killed by this young lady." A lot of question marks appeared on the faces of Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji. They were a little confused. They didn't know whether to say that this void area was ridiculously remote, or they didn't know what to say. It seems that this void still hides its own secrets. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his forehead in distress. It was not just because it was in a corner of the upper plane. He had just glanced at the bottom layer of the concept of laws. The position did indeed belong to the upper plane, but the law imprints were unfamiliar. He couldn't find this level in the void. After listening to what Yin Nuoxing said, Jing Yuanji could not help but say, "This is a newly discovered layer? Some layers of the void are indeed hidden very deeply. That is probably why they have not appeared in our sight until now. Isn't it?" Yin Nuoxing shook his head and rubbed his bangs and hair hard. The layers of the void belong to concepts and rules. Just like the void itself, there are as many layers as you want. Apart from the surface and bottom layer of the rules, there are as many layers in the middle as you want. As for how many layers you want to divide, you just need to use the power of the rules to adjust it. What I mean by can't find is that according to the rules that are normally woven, this void layer should not exist. There are many bizarre loopholes in the concept layer of the void, loopholes that are not fully developed. The rules themselves are not complete, and logically speaking, this part of the rules could not even maintain itself and should directly collapse. Yet they are perfectly fine in the void, and there is not even any abnormality. It is a little like an error derived from the void itself, similar to the error of the origin life forms. It should collapse and disintegrate on its own, but remain stable due to certain circumstances. Half of the concept layer of the void is stable, but the flow of the power of the rules and void energy is unusually excited. The other half is like a stagnant pool, seemingly solidified into an eternal concept that would never change. The void and rules that should be coexisting with each other are tangled like fried dough twists in some places. Rubbing his hair until smoke was coming out, Yin Nuoxing suddenly shook his head violently. "No, I can't figure it out. I can't see what's going on here for the time being. Anyway, let's contact the Void Frontline first and ask Green to call some people over. This time, we may need to explore the void on a large scale to understand what is going on. While Yin Nuashing was preparing to summon people through soul communication, Min and the others were walking around, preparing to study the matters of the void. Ning Fei saw that their expressions had become strange after a few sentences and did not say anything. He inadvertently turned his gaze and saw Gu Zhongming. Suddenly, he was stunned and hurriedly looked at Yun Nuashing. Seeing that his expression gradually became serious, he hurriedly turned to look at Jing Yuanji. "May I ask, how do you plan to deal with the star spiritual spring?" When Jing Yuanji, who was standing by the side, heard this, she subconsciously looked back at the core that was emitting a faint blue light. As for that unlucky planet, there was not even a speck of dust left at this time. Their forceful entry had disrupted the plans of countless experts who had come to this world. After being cleansed by the nothingness, boundless chaos, everyone kept a respectful distance from them. No one dared to say anything in front of them. The spring of the star soul, which had been snatched by countless people just now, was now no one daring to touch it. They did not have any interest in the so-called spring of the star soul, but since no one came over at this time, it could be said that it was theirs by default. Jing Yuanji looked at the faint blue core. Mei Mao's eyes flashed. She could not tell whether Lord Feng had made any decision. At this moment, seeing his expression becoming more and more solemn, she knew that something bad might have happened again. She did not want to disturb him for the time being. You want the spring of the star soul? That's not it. It's just that." Ning Fei hurriedly waved his hand and glanced at Gu Zhongming. "I just want to borrow it. It will probably consume a portion of its energy, but it won't have any effect on the spring of the star soul." He gritted his teeth and clasped his fists solemnly. "If I can borrow the spring of the star soul, no matter what happens in the future, just tell me, and I won't have any complaints." Jing Yuanji squinted her eyes. They had come to this strange region of the void. It was very unfamiliar. It would be good if someone could help lead the way. Moreover, these two young men who had just reached the high level of reciprocity seemed to have good talent. It would be good to take these two laborers to the front lines of the void. Thinking of this, she nodded. "Okay, then you can go. Thank you very much." Ning Fei was overjoyed. He was so excited that he knelt down and bowed. He was so excited that he almost bowed deeply. However, he didn't care about this. After receiving permission, he hurriedly pulled the unconscious Gu Zhongming and jumped towards the spring of the star soul. He was in a hurry, even faster than when he was being chased. Seeing the two jump into the blue core, Jing Yuanji turned her head and saw Yun Nuashing's stormy expression. She couldn't help but be stunned. "Lord Feng, what's wrong?" Yun Nuashing vaguely replied with a few meaningless syllables. After a few seconds, she raised her head and said in a deep voice, "We lost contact. All contact with the front lines of the void has been cut off." Jing Yuanji was startled. Yin Nuashing pointed at the star spirit spring and continued, "We just came out from there, but I just used my energy to test it. It's a one-way exit. It only allows us to leave and not enter. Right now, it's just a pure energy spring. To put it bluntly, we might be trapped in this region of the void. Moreover, all contact with the front lines of the void has been cut off. Our connection with the realm of the gods has been cut off. This might be bad. Even your connection with the realm of the gods has been forcibly cut off." Jing Yuanji murmured with a shocked expression. She had heard him say that the connection between the second godhood and the realm of the gods was probably the most difficult to erase in this world. Even reincarnation couldn't do it. She didn't expect that the connection would be cut off because of a region of the void. Isn't it just a region of the void? Can't we just go back through the void? Dao Heaven couldn't help but ask when he heard this in her soul. Yin Nuashing sighed deeply and murmured faintly, "Do you still remember what I just said? This region of the void shouldn't exist on the level of the void. It's missing something very important. There's no way to determine where it is in the upper plane. As for the teleportation, you'll know when you see it." Yin Nuashing waved her hand and broke open a space about 3 meters wide. A dark red energy vortex gradually formed and then disappeared in an instant. The teleportation gate collapsed along with the power of the void and space that had just condensed, disappearing into nothingness. He patiently tried dozens of times until the little angel and the others felt a little cold on their backs, then slowly stopped. Yin Nuashing looked around and sighed faintly. I didn't expect that I would actually crawl into the pit all the time. My pot. I choose death. Chapter 1522. Yin Nuashing felt a headache when he was forced to lose contact. Moreover, he had already confirmed that Hui was also lost before he came in. Moreover, he was one step ahead of him. Huey's situation was known to everyone. It was just that he was there to hold him down, so nothing happened. This time, even he, the mascot who suppressed the void, had disappeared. Who knew what kind of chaos the void frontline would be, or maybe nothing would happen. Anyway, the number 1 figure of the divine world often disappeared, and the number 2 figure left a group of people to look for the number 1 figure all year round. This was something that many people knew before the gathering of high-level beings in the divine world, although not many people knew who the number 1 figure was at that time. So, probably, maybe in theory, it was unlikely that there would be any chaos. Moreover, there was also the abyss death mist, which was a headache. The disappearance of the 2 of them. No, the group of them might not cause a storm. After a little panic, Qing Jun and the others would react. It was not like they had really met with an accident. Lord Feng, how should we deal with this energy spring? Jing Yuanji leaned in front of Yin Nuashing and pointed to the eye not far away that was emitting a faint blue light to the whole starry sky. As Ning Fei and Yi Qingtang entered the star spirit spring, a circle of energy mist suddenly appeared. The 2 ends were long and narrow, and the middle was thick. The blue energy core, which seemed to be rotating as the energy surged, now looked like an eyeball with a radius of thousands of miles. I haven't thought about it yet, but how did it become like this? Yin Nuashing tilted his head when he saw the star spirit spring that had turned into an eye. Just as he was about to go over and take a look, his soul scattered in the starry sky caught a little sound. Those guys who were still watching and had not left the starry sky seemed to be very interested in the situation here. Those 2 guys can actually cause such a huge change in the star spirit spring. I've heard that even among the void lords who possess the soul spring, there aren't many who can cause such a spectacular phenomenon. Are there going to be 2 more peerless figures who can dominate the void? I wonder how they will compare with those few. I'm more concerned about how those girls are going to deal with the star spirit spring. If they plan to expand their territory soon, they'll have to grab a good spot in advance. The other families don't have any more spots. Previously, I heard that there was a power that obtained the star spirit spring, but kept it in their own home, and no one from the outside came into contact with it. Later on, it was said that they were killed by the combined forces of tens of powers. If you don't have enough strength, you won't be able to defend it. If you don't accumulate enough strength to deal with those fellows who are eyeing it covetously, there will naturally be others who will come knocking on your door. Do you think that there are only a few people who have designs on the star spiritual spring? If not for the fact that those few void tyrants have stabilized their positions, there will naturally be more people who will come knocking on your door. Well, that's none of our business. Anyway, let's go back first. Someone will pay attention to this matter. Anyway, the matter here is not something we can get involved in. That's right. Let's not talk about those 2 youths for now. Even that girl. Don't talk anymore. Let's go. He felt that there were many things worth paying attention to in this big pile of conversation. However, Jing Yuanji and the others were focused on that girl and couldn't help but laugh. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing's cheeks flushed. He was already used to it. Anyway, it wasn't something that happened once or twice. Seeing Jing Yuanji trying to stifle her laughter, Yin Nuashing's face darkened. He walked over and reached out to ruffle her light blue hair. Seeing that Jing Yuanji quickly came back to her senses, he snorted lightly and turned his head, lifting his feet to walk towards the star spirit spring. Jing Yuanji stuck out her tongue, quickly tidied up her hair, and followed closely behind Feng Luo. The star spirit spring was spewing a thick energy mist into the surrounding starry sky. The movement was not as big as when they first appeared. It seemed to be releasing energy stably according to some law, forming such a strange phenomenon. Yin Nuoxing leaned over and reached out to brush the energy mist, absorbing part of the energy into his body. A moment later, a blue light flashed in his eyes. It's the same kind of energy that we saw when we came here. However, this star spirit spring itself seems to contain too much power of law. It's too big. It's as if the rules, energy, and origin energy of an entire world have been compressed and condensed until it became such a core. All the rules and all the energy it possesses remain unchanged. The only thing that has changed is its appearance. Jing Yuanji looked around the starry sky. Now that it was quiet, she saw the appearance of the starry sky, a little lonely, cold, without any big stars. The whole starry sky was left with the remnants of the energy impact left behind by the fierce battle. A lot of energy hovered in the starry sky and dissipated very slowly, forming the traces of a collision between a nebula and a galaxy. Perhaps the battle itself had destroyed the vitality of the starry sky, or perhaps it was not an active world in the first place. The world barrier is stable. The rules and energy of this world are in a low state of activity. There are no signs of the birth of life. The degree of stability of the space is different from other ordinary worlds. Jing Yuanji looked at the starry sky, sweeping along some of the traces and finally closing her eyes on the eye in front of her. She was slightly stunned. Feng Luo, this I may be a point of law entanglement. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing's eyes surged with pure white energy. He quickly scanned this world and finally fixed his gaze on the star spirit spring. Nodding, he said, "That's right. It's a point of law entanglement." In addition to what I just said, the so-called star spirit spring may be a special law creation formed by condensing all the energy and all the laws in this starry sky. That's why this starry sky appears so clean. It's equivalent to half a world core. As he spoke, Yin Nuoxing paused and continued to look at the depths of the star spirit spring. After a while, he laughed inexplicably. Interesting. Not only is this star spirit spring a point of law entanglement, that seriously injured kid is also a point of law entanglement. And the number of laws entangling him is not small at all. After so many years, I finally see another person who is a point of law entanglement. Hearing this, Jing Yuanji also looked at the depths of the star spirit spring curiously. After looking for a while, she knew the extent of the so-called not small. Ge Zhongming was probably entangled with the laws of several worlds. Jing Yuanji was speechless. Not only was he a point of law entanglement for one world, he was also a point of law entanglement for several worlds at the same time. However, this doesn't seem to be a point of law entanglement on the level of a world's light orb. Is it a point of law entanglement on the level of a planet or a continent with a world core? Jing Yuanji turned to ask Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing nodded. The worlds entangled with him are also not weak worlds. But it seems that because of this reason, those entangled laws are a little messy and can't integrate well on his body. Just like the pillar of creation that broke itself, the entangled laws at the bottom are much more complicated than the twine on his body. Oh, this is probably why they need the star spirit spring. They intend to use another source of law to sort it out. It's almost done, but since he is a coolie you have kidnapped, I still have to help a little. Yin Nuoxing stretched out his right hand and pointed his index finger and middle finger at Ge Zhongming's position. A pure and dazzling white light burst out from his fingers and flashed into Ge Zhongming's forehead. The twine on Ge Zhongming's body underwent a huge change in an instant. It will be done in about 5 minutes. Yin Nuoxing gently waved his hands and turned his head to see Jing Yuanji looking at him eagerly. Her gaze occasionally turned to the star spirit spring. He could not help but wonder, what's wrong? That spring doesn't have any use for you. Jing Yuanji shook her head with a huff. Her red lips trembled for a while, and she could not help but mutter, I'm jealous, Yin Nuoxing. Didn't he just help Gu Zhongming sort out the entangled laws? It was much simpler than operating on the pillar of creation. Why would this girl be jealous of him? Reaching out his hand to knock lightly on Jing Yuanji's head, Yin Nuoxing called out to the other two who ran away in their souls. It's about time to come back. We have to think about our next itinerary. As soon as his voice trailed off, Min and Qingyu appeared beside him. He tilted his head and looked at them. How was it? Did you find anything interesting? Qingyu shook her head. Min frowned slightly. Seeing that Qingyu did not have anything to say, he said, "This void is different from the void we are in. Although it is also an upper plane, but I can't describe that feeling. My perception of the void, my control of the void, always gives me a feeling of solidification. It is as if it is unwilling. No, it cannot respond to my call. Is there a problem with the command to the void?" Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and saw Min nodding silently. Pursing his lips for a moment, he also tried to use divine right command to the void. As expected, he felt a little unnatural. Just as Min said, the void was a little stiff and could not respond to their call quickly. He let Jing Yuanji try it once and directly observed the same result. Yin Nuoxing frowned. However, the people in this void did not seem to have such a situation. When that person suddenly sent people to attack them, he was watching them gather the energy of the void. He did not see such a sluggish feeling. I don't know what's wrong. Yin Nuoxing rubbed between his eyebrows. This void has been strange from beginning to end, but I can't tell what's wrong in a short time. Perhaps we have to use a large-scale void guidance to see if this void is having a stomachache, or is it choking its brain? Min and the others, ignoring the strange gazes of the girls in front of him and in the spiritual world, Yin Nuoxing sighed reluctantly. We have to do something big again. Void guidance. It's been a long time since we did it, and it's in an unfamiliar void. We have to set up new void nodes and law nodes. The torrent of information will probably torment the people in this void. If we are treated as outsiders again. Dao Heaven could not help but look at the little angels and the others. Big brother, why do you always like to go to other people's territories and torment them? I know this. Siyu raised her hand excitedly and said with a smile, strictly speaking, Little Star tormenting other people's territories is a coincidence, because Little Star is the biggest troublemaker in this void. He will always get himself involved in some strange events. The existing events will also become very strange because of Little Star's arrival, ever since the spiritual world suddenly trembled. The girls quickly sat up straight and smiled sweetly. Their foreheads were covered in cold sweat, and they did not dare to say a word. If they said a few more words, Yin Nuoxing would probably rush in and fight them to the death. The little Tsundera's anger and humiliation swirled around the entire spiritual world, and several mountains in the distance trembled. Jing Yuanji and the other two stared blankly at Yin Nuoxing, who was suddenly overwhelmed with shame and anger. They looked at each other in confusion. Jing Yuanji pondered for a moment and felt that the girls in his soul must have caused some trouble. These girls. Yin Nuoxing gritted his teeth and muttered. After a moment, he sighed, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This was really, whether it was in this life or in the future, his spiritual world was repaired for those girls to torment. It seemed that he did not have such an experience in the ancient era. After all, he did not have feelings at that time. If it's void guidance, let me take a look. This is a good place. Yin Nuoxing looked around and brought Jing Yuanji and the others to a place about 1,000 miles away from the Star Spirit Spring. Then, he reached out and squeezed hard in front of him. The starlight from hundreds of millions of light years away suddenly condensed rapidly here. The remaining energy and laws in the entire starry sky were all mobilized in a second. A considerable part of it was extracted and then gathered in front of him. Yin Nuoxing's body flashed with a pure white light. His hand seals changed, and the countless energies gathered under his guidance into a huge scorching storm. Dozens of energies mixed and collided in it. Yuanji, Qingyu Min, I'll borrow your energy and leave a law mark in it. Yin Nuoxing put his hands together. As the energies of the three people mixed into the scorching storm began to expand wildly. It rolled into a vortex and sucked in all the remaining energy in the starry sky. In just a minute, it had become 1,000,000 miles wide. Yin Nuoxing snapped his fingers at the space. The storm slowly dispersed, and a huge pure white star was revealed from the gradually dissipating storm. It was not particularly dazzling, but it made people feel very warm. A very strong power of order. Min's eyes flashed slightly, and his cold voice sounded. Construct a sufficiently stable core of laws and order. Fuse all the origin energy to form a layer of energy. Finally, Yin Nuoxing reached out and groped in the space beside him for a while. Then he pulled out a black pillar that was 1,000,000 miles long out of thin air. He aimed at the pure white star and threw it in with force. Carve a mark on the node of order, weave the laws, energy veins, and guide the energy of the void. This place will be the place where the veins are carved. The small pillar of creation plunged into the pure white star, creating a huge splash. The energy from the star quickly fused with the former, and the two were regulated in a mutually balanced manner. The star dragged the small pillar of creation to the surface of its almost solid core and firmly took root. A thin beam of energy suddenly burst out from the top of the small pillar of creation. It passed through the star and was noticed by Yin Nuoxing and the others. Then it instantly disappeared from this part of the starry sky and entered the void. It exploded into a ring of energy. Vaguely, countless energy threads appeared from the center of the ring of energy and spread out in all directions. However, it was only a faint shadow. Yin Nuoxing and the others followed the line of sight into the void. Watching the ring of energy explode and gradually disappear, he breathed a sigh of relief. The energy veins guided by the void have been completed. Next, we have to wander in the void to find a suitable place to make the void node. Then, we have to repeat the same steps and adjust according to the current location of the void. After that, he let out another long sigh. If he was not inexplicably trapped in this void, he would not have bothered to go through so much trouble. Speaking of which, wherever he went, there would be pits. And those pits gradually enlarged from small secret realms and small worlds to the void. Was this a tailor-made prison for him? Was he trying to escape or survive in a secret realm? Jing Yuanji could not help but smile bitterly when she saw Lord Feng entering into a grayish-white state and muttering strange words like, "I'm not. It's not me. I don't know." She did not know what Lord Feng was thinking of. She pulled Lord Feng's arm and whispered, "Lord Feng, do we just put the void node here without concealing it?" Recovering from the grayish-white state, Yin Nuoxing coughed softly and looked up at the slowly rotating behemoth before him. He pondered for a moment and said, "There's a hidden place inside the small pillar of creation, so we don't have to worry about intruders. That space can also protect the void node from being destroyed by energy below the Yuansha realm." He paused for a moment and suddenly smiled with a dark face. It took a lot of effort to make the pillar of creation. It's not fun if it's taken apart. There's not much left in this thing, and there's no time to make a new one. I'm just replacing the energy of the old ones. If there's a small fry here causing trouble, I'll have a hard time. Why don't we set up 2 defensive circles nearby? His words made the girls break out in a cold sweat. This guy was acting up again, and he did it as soon as he said it. In just a few seconds, he had already thrown out a ton of arrays. Looking at the dazzling energy and terrifying magic circles that were gradually disappearing into the space beside the pillar of creation, Jing Yuanji quietly wiped the sweat off her pretty face. She remembered what Lord Hui said the other day. Lord Feng's magic circles will make the void shine with the light of goatism. Now that he thought about it, this wasn't something that could be settled just by saying it. Just look at the array formation that was shining in the starry sky. The array formation was as thick as the pure white star in front of him. 2 energy beams suddenly gushed out from the spring of star essence and circled in the starry sky. As Yin Nuoxing and the others watched, they landed 2 to 3 meters in front of them. The figures of Ning Fei and Gu Zhongming gradually appeared in the light beam, and the two slowly walked out. The handsome young man swung his long ponytail and long robe as he saluted Yin Nuoxing and the others. He bowed and said softly, "I'll never forget the favor of saving my life." "Oh, you're just in time. You don't have to say anything else. I have something to talk to you about." Yin Nuoxing waved her hand gently, and a wave of energy swept over and lifted the two up. "You seem to have recovered well. We're just about to set off." Gu Zhongming smiled and straightened up. "As you wish, fairy." Yin Nuoxing's forehead was bulging. "First of all, I'm a man." Ning Fei and Gu Zhongming, well, this was their signature expression. They had seen this expression of shock and amazement, as well as wanting to poke their own eyes out countless times. Yin Nuoxing sighed sadly and waved her hand. "It's our first time in this void, and we have something important to do. You just have to lead the way. I'll tell you the rest of the things on the way." "All right, let's go wherever it's lively." Chapter 1523. It was boundless, and the order was calm. Everything seemed normal, but the existence of this area was difficult to describe and measure with specific views and phenomena. In this endless and empty void, the only thing that could be digressed. Perhaps it was because every time she entered the void, she would feel that she would have to wander for a long time. So Yin Nuoxing would always think of some irrelevant things in her mind. In the boundless dark void, a brilliant and dazzling pure white light suddenly tore through the darkness. A pure white phoenix about 1,000 feet long gently flapped its wings and rapidly moved forward in this vast and endless void sea. The rules and order on its body were rapidly changing as it swept through the void. Yin Nuoxing and the others were sitting in the middle of the phoenix's shadow. A few meters in front of them, Ning Fei and Gu Zhongming were controlling the aura of order and rules to guide the way in the void. From time to time, they would release their godly souls to sense the void and adjust the order barrier they were holding up. Throughout the process, Yin Nuoxing, Jing Yuanji, and Min were all staring at them. They watched as they mobilized the void energy without the slightest sense of stagnation. It came and went as they wished, as if it was their own arm. This was nonsense. They were already in the realm of advanced origin, and their exploration of the void had begun when they were in the reincarnation realm. They used to control the void in this way until they came to this strange void area. Min reached out her hand and pinched the void. The void energy hovered and condensed in her palm, and then showed signs of instability little by little. Not long after, half of the void energy suddenly exploded and disappeared without a sound. The remaining half in her hand remained stable, but after 10 minutes, the remaining half would also show all kinds of strange changes. It was as if she was just grabbing a ball of origin void, and this drop of water that had escaped from the void sea was struggling to get out of her control. Min waved her hand to disperse the void energy inside. What the hell was this? When they were traveling in the void, there was no danger. Siyu and the others had also jumped out of Yin Nuoxing's spiritual world and were now sitting on the back of the phoenix's shadow. The phoenix's shadow was 1,000 feet long, and its back was as spacious as a small manor. Not to mention these girls, even his whole family in the 139th era would not feel crowded if they all crowded on it. At that time, little purple soul, Yuer, and Yuer were still running on it. Oh, as for why it was the phoenix's shadow, it was purely out of habit. There was nothing between him and Feng Qing Wang. Yin Nuoxing glanced at Feng Qing Wang, who was sitting next to him quietly. Yin Nuoxing facepalmed. What the hell? He even said that Feng Qing Wang is a phoenix, but Feng Qing Wang and Feng Er are a little bit different. Now that I think about it, 100 million years ago, he might have said that. But now that I think about it, they've been fighting side by side for more than 100 million years. He has already familiarized himself with her. Sure enough, Feng Er used to be this kind of cute and good fighter. She was also a little stubborn. Her crimson-pink eyes stared at the boundless void. The young girl, who was in a trance, suddenly felt a hand gently rubbing her long hair. She turned her head and met Yin Nuoxing's complicated gaze, which seemed to contain emotions that transcended time and space. She tilted her head in confusion, and a puzzled voice came out from her nose. Nothing. Yin Nuoxing shook her head. I just thought of something. Feng Qing Wang chuckled and suddenly said, Are you okay? You had such a big thing just now. Speaking of this, Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. Jing Yuanji, who was sitting next to her, also showed a strange expression. Although she did not see Feng Er eat this and that, but when she saw it again, she felt that the scene was a little strange. Her eyes swept over Feng Er until he twisted his body uncomfortably. Then, she turned her head awkwardly. Yin Nuoxing pressed on his stomach and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although he ate it, he did not really throw it into his stomach. He had many ways and spaces to deal with this kind of creation that was entangled with energy and rules. Eating it into his body was just sifting through it, checking its characteristics, and observing its structure. It was a creation of rules and energy, a point of entanglement of rules. It had a similar function as the heart of the world. It could directly communicate with the void and transform endless energy. The connection between it and the other space was probably one-sided. He had tried hundreds of times, but still couldn't use it to connect to the space that was one-sided. It was unrealistic to use the star spring to return to that space. At this moment, it had already been thrown from his stomach, in his brain, into a random world that stored endless energy. Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh and realized that Feng Qing Huang was still staring at him. He smiled and pinched her beautiful face. Of course, there's no problem. I just want to check it out for fun. Now, I have put it aside for safekeeping. All right, this thing might be useful to you guys as well. I have left a portal in your soul world that leads to that energy spring. You guys can go and take a look if you need to. But remember, do not swallow the rule power from that place. You guys can slowly feel it and use yourself to understand it. Even if you do need to make a small breakthrough in the rule power, you can only swallow it bit by bit. Feng Qing Wang listened attentively to Yin Nuoxing's explanation. So you noticed the situation here and hurriedly came over. In less than a second, she entered a state of calmness and listened to every word Yin Nuoxing said. Jing Yuanji was also listening. Mei Mao seemed to be in deep thought. What Lord Feng described was an unusual path, which was not more than 1 point similar to the path taken by most people in their realm. Usually, it was said that the paths of the reincarnation state were mostly the same. Even though everyone's path was different, it was more or less similar in the grand scheme of things. After all, under the general trend of the void, no matter how different the paths of the 8 elements realm were, they would not deviate to the single elements realm. The path Lord Feng took was unorthodox, extreme, and very unique. Master Feng, after listening to Yin Nuoxing, Jing Yuanji tugged at his clothes. Can I also start again? No, don't mess around. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly waved his hand and shook his head. Everyone in the state of reincarnation needs to find the most suitable path for themselves. Let's not talk about whether it's unique or not. It has to be the most suitable for themselves. This can only be explored with endless time. Sometimes this path will even overturn the definition of the world and the void as you grow bit by bit as you grow. It can even be overturned countless times. I'm just giving you some guidance and some ideas so that you can have a vague idea that won't leave anyone's shadow. What you need to do is to follow your own thoughts and supplemented this vague idea to explore and constantly refresh yourself. Don't let the cognition and thoughts at this moment bind you. As long as that path still needs to be opened by yourself, you can't have the idea of stopping or solidifying. My path is the most suitable path for myself. It is the most remote and the most extreme path. It's so extreme that it can't be corrected. It's not impossible for you to say that it's either life or death, but it's not suitable for you to use as a reference. So you only need to know the ideas. Yin Nuoxing pinched his bangs and said, Extreme and remote? The girls pondered. They recalled the battles that they had witnessed so far and felt that this was absolutely right. When playing with his own life, he could play with the lives of others. If anyone in the void dared to gamble with their lives with him, they would definitely be tired of reincarnation. Who would dare to use life, death, and reincarnation as a bargaining chip and throw it on the table without any scruples? The consequence of doing so would be to reincarnate again. But he still looked indifferent. To be honest, if anyone in the void provoked him, they would really be tired of reincarnation. Suddenly, the shadow of the phoenix let out a cry that resounded in the realm of order. Yin Nuoxing and the others turned their heads and found that Ning Fei and Ge Zhoming were quickly mobilizing the power of order. The pure black color of the void was tinged with a faint purple color. The pure realm of void began to dissipate little by little. This proved that they were close to a void territory with order. And such a large area of sudden change meant that they might have arrived in front of a world group. Just as she was thinking, Ge Zhoming turned his head with a hint of joy and said, "Mr. Feng, we're almost there." Yin Nuoxing and the others stood up and looked ahead. They quickly mobilized the power of order and energy in their bodies. Suddenly, a large area of light appeared in the dark void. A large world group was rapidly emerging from the shadows of the void. C was holding Yin Nuoxing's shoulder to make herself stand higher to look at the world group. Although this action was basically useless, she was just about to let out a happy cry when she suddenly noticed the shadow that they had been sitting on for a few hours. Her expression became a little strange. "Little star, have you and Qing Huang done it?" C landed and put her hands around Yin Nuoxing's neck. She whispered in his ear, Did you say a contract?" No, it's just... It's hard to explain." Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly. He didn't form a soul link with Feng Qing Huang, nor did he form a soul contract. It was just that he was subconsciously used to this state. C listened to Yin Nuoxing's words. She turned to the side and put her arms around Feng Qing Huang's shoulder. She giggled and said, Qing Huang, when did you do it with Little Star?" "No." Feng Qing Huang glanced at her and ran her fingers through her hair. "I was rejected." "Yeah." C was stunned. Yin Nuoxing's earth-shattering coughs came from the side. His pretty face turned red. Feng Qing Huang glanced at Yin Nuoxing and smiled. She didn't pay much attention to it. She did mention it once, and he did reject it once. As for the reason, it was very vague. However, looking at his nervous and conflicted face, she could tell that he wasn't just brushing her off. He probably had his own thoughts. Anyway, she didn't mention it again after that. While they were talking, the huge group of worlds was rapidly approaching them. The dense clusters of light connected to each other like a net, dividing the void into many grids. Yin Nuoxing noticed that there was no void passage between these clusters of light. Ning Fei and Ge Zhoming also said that there was no such efficient way to connect them. Since, I forgot how many years ago, when the void suddenly had countless worlds out of nowhere due to a turbulence. The void has been like this. Don't be fooled by its peaceful appearance now. During the years when the upheaval happened, there was not a single day of peace. The entire void was in a life and death battle. Looking at you guys, you should be from one of the more peaceful regions, right? You guys were lucky not to be involved in the storm of war. Yin Nuoxing and the others said that they had a stomachache. That they didn't know how to explain that they were involved in the largest civil war in the entire void, and that they were currently experiencing the largest civil war in the entire Grand Yuan realm. They didn't know how to explain it, so they could only put on a stiff smile and pretend that they didn't experience it. The problem of regional isolation was really troublesome. To sum it up, it was, I've never heard of what you said, and what I said sounded like nonsense to you. Anyway, the void itself sounded like nonsense. The chaotic war lasted for a very long time. It finally stopped millions of years ago. On one hand, it was because of the compromises made by all sides. On the other hand, it was because of the appearance of the Star Spirit Spring. Its appearance stopped the war that spread throughout the void. When one side is dominant, all sides submit. However, such a situation can be broken. Unless the dominant side is so powerful that everyone in the world of order can't compete with it. It's only temporary, Yin Nuoxing said. Gu Zhongming and Min nodded. Min's pretty face twitched, and she couldn't help but nod as well. They had painstakingly built up their forces in the void back then, but in the end, they were forced to submit under the attack of the realm of gods. Now, they were holding hands and fighting against the abyssal death mist at the front line of the void. Noticing that Min was looking at him, Yun Nuoxing turned his head and stuck his tongue out at her. He knew that the girl was still a little unhappy, but she didn't show it. Gu Zhongming guided the phoenix's shadow towards the largest light cluster. At such a close distance, Yun Nuoxing could clearly see the situation of the 100 light clusters around them. Countless lives came and went in the void. This place seemed to be a unified big world. There were some obscure fluctuations of the laws that originated from the same law imprint. It was as if it was announcing to all the other lives that this was their territory. It was a lively place. He could feel it even before he entered. In less than a minute before the teleportation, he saw many places through the world barrier. He couldn't help but laugh. Where the laws and order converge, I found a few suitable places to place void nodes. Yuan Ji, help me keep an eye on that world. And that one over there from left to left, and the third one above. Yes, that's it. Remember the order and spatial fluctuations around here. When the time comes, you have to adjust your imprint first. Oh, Min's imprint won't be needed. Gu Zhongming couldn't help but be stunned when he heard that. They hadn't even entered yet, but he had already seen all these things through the world barrier. Although he heard Ning Fei talk about what he encountered while he was unconscious, he still caught a glimpse of Mr. Feng's strength. He was a little surprised. Mr. Feng, then should we go and set up the void nodes first, or go to the overworld first? Ning Fei had the phoenix stop in the void and turn around to ask respectfully. They had heard what Yin Nuoxing's group said to them along the way, so they understood what they were going to do to the void. However, they were still a little confused and couldn't quite understand. No hurry. I still need to observe for a while. Other than the few places I saw just now that I can decide on without thinking, I still need to find a suitable place myself. Yin Nuoxing chuckled and waved her hand forward. Ning Fei understood and had the phoenix's shadow continue forward, rushing into the light cluster of the overworld. With a rapid change of energy state, their teleportation was completed. A second ago, it was still a dark void. At this time, they opened their eyes and saw a brilliant galaxy in front of them. It was full of obvious traces of artificial transformation. There were many big stars and planets with life. It was an unusually prosperous and lively world. As soon as they completed the change of teleportation and their eyes adjusted to the surrounding scene, they saw a huge, strange ship rumbling in front of them. Moreover, it was heading toward them. Ning Fei and Yin Nuoxing's group were startled. Just as they were about to urgently retreat, a series of strange clanking sounds suddenly came from the ship. After a burst of violent energy flashes, the ship came to a stop with difficulty. Little Red Man, what the hell are you doing? If you want to die, then please go to the side. Don't get in the way here. Without saying a word, the people on the ship cursed at Yin Nuoxing and the others who were standing in front of them. After cursing and throwing out a few words of greeting, they stiffly turned the ship around and continued to rush forward on the path they had just taken. The ship was speeding a little too fast. Behind it, there were a few other ships that were speeding along at the same speed. Jing Yuanji originally stood up in an instant and wanted to beat them up, but Yin Nuoxing pulled her back and pulled her to sit down. She patted her head to calm her down. Then, she watched the ships go away and couldn't help but sigh. The 51st era hasn't even reached the end yet. Are there already new tricks to blackmail people? Everyone. Fortunately, this big boss was calm and didn't care about those people. If it were them or other people, they would have rolled up their sleeves and rushed up to beat those people up. It was not like they couldn't beat them. Gu Zhongming's group had stayed in this area for a long time. In fact, at their level. No, not to mention the origin realm, just the divine realm alone was enough for them to run around the void. There were many places they hadn't been to, but they had been to many places. Their nature of running around the world was actually similar to Yin Nuoxing's nature of running around the world. No, I think there is a little difference. When Gu Zhongming introduced this world to them, Yin Nuoxing's group listened and couldn't help but say something. See, you couldn't help but mutter. Yin Nuoxing stretched out her hand and touched the girl's face with a kind face. She pulled a few funny shapes. This area belongs to one of the dominators of the void, the Divine Court. It is the Divine Court that I told you about before, Ning Fei said. Feng Qing Huang suddenly frowned. If that's the case, won't they come after us after we killed their people? We left many alive just now. Who knows if they will pass the information to them? Indeed, but we don't have to worry too much. The main world of the Divine Court is indeed this world. The light cluster is true, but their headquarters isn't in this world. The forces they leave behind in each world are only equivalent to a few city passes. As long as we don't take the initiative to approach them, we won't attract their attention. Ning Fei said, also, if we fail to get the star's spiritual spring and lose contact with them, all the major forces know what that means. Basically, they won't pursue a person or a rising force because of this matter, unless someone very important to them dies. Yin Nuoxing nodded. We didn't poke at their sore spot. If we did, it wouldn't be the same. It was a verdant and lush planet that was abnormally large. The blessing of a high-level life form had made this planet extremely vast. Its volume had already reached half the size of an ordinary star. Other than the vitality of this planet, what was reflected in one's eyes were the numerous order and energy barriers that enveloped this planet. There were truly quite a number of them. The Divine Court likes to play tricks with space. This is the first star of the main world. Although there's only one star, there are actually many superimposed spaces in it. It can be said that there is no end to them. It is said that some of them are quite similar to the void. Those spaces can be explored to the end, but there is no way to measure how vast they are. Gu Zhongming was stunned. You can see the whole picture? It is said that this space has been developing. Even the Divine Court themselves don't know how big it is. They don't know the whole picture. I can see it. Look in that direction. Yin Nuoxing pointed in a direction and pointed to the starry sky. In the unfolded space there's a building that looks like a cedar tree. It should be quite deep. That is a special building set up in the deepest space of the Divine Court. Okay, I believe you. Ning Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. What kind of big shot was this? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.